Morning came. Old Mr. Preston woke up feeling better than he had in days, but something was missing. His schedule was still packed. Semi-retired was just a title. The work never really stopped. Before he knew it, lunchtime had arrived. The food was tasteless. Low salt, low oil. It was an insult to his palate. His mind wandered to a perfectly grilled fish, the kind buried under a mountain of red chili peppers, glistening with oil and spice. Life was full of little injustices. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it. He just wasn't allowed to have it. His body wouldn't permit it. Half an hour after his meal, Adam Wright, his assistant, handed him a cup of tea. It too was bland. The finest Angie white tea, and it might as well have been hot water. As he prepared for his afternoon nap, Mr. Preston decided to go through Dr. Shin's mindful restoration technique again. He got about halfway through before he lost the thread. It was better than when he tried it on his own, but the feeling of leaving something unfinished was irritating. He couldn't help but ask, "Where is Dr. Foster?" "He's on a plane at the moment, sir," Adam replied. "He'll be landing in about 2.5 hours. He just posted on his Facebook." Mr. Preston remembered, right? The young man wasn't coming today, and Dr. Shin wasn't either. Sometimes he found himself getting annoyed with people who were too straightforward, too unwilling to play the game, too lacking in ambition. The older and more powerful he became, the more he understood the mindset of those old, foolish kings from history. When you're at the top, you can't help but gravitate toward the ones who try to impress you, the ones who know how to flatter you and make you laugh. They were easy to manage. They practically handed you the leash. But the ones who didn't bother with pleasantries, yet were undeniably useful, they were a different kind of challenge. Adam, ever prepared, held up a tablet displaying the Facebook post. A 9-photo grid. The kid certainly lived a full life. There was even a picture of him with General Ingram, who looked surprisingly sharp. Why didn't he think to take a picture with me? Mr. Preston felt a mix of affection and exasperation for Leo. His godfather had taught him to be a little too earnest. General Ingram had posted the photo in their group chat yesterday, saying young Leo had taken it. He did look good. The general's appearance had set the chat abuzz, drawing everyone out of the woodwork. He hadn't been seen in a long time, and the old guard had been quietly worrying, a grim sense of shared mortality hanging in the air. But in the photo, his spirits seemed high, his optimism as relentless as ever. Mr. Preston sighed as he scrolled through Leo's pictures, then headed back for his nap. "Adam, find that video of Dr. Foster singing, would you? Let's give that a try." He didn't bother with the exercises. He just let the song loop until he drifted off. It was only a 20-minute nap, but it was deep and restful. Leo read his novel for about 20 minutes before his eyelids grew heavy. The plane had reached cruising altitude, and he was able to recline his seat. He gave a nod to Alex, pulled down the window shade, and covered himself with a blanket, ready for a nap. The cabin was oxygenated, but with so many people, it still felt a little thin. It made thinking feel sluggish, but it was perfect for falling asleep. He was woken by the clatter of the flight attendant's service cart. The first-class meal was an exercise in ceremony. They laid out a linen placemat and served each course on a separate plate. It made even the pre-packaged food taste better. The airline selections were decent, or at least not terrible. Leo snapped a picture of the food to send to Stella. He noticed that while the in-flight Wi-Fi was good enough for messaging, sending an image was an exercise in watching a spinning wheel of death. The anxiety wasn't worth it, so he deleted it. After eating, he went back to his novel. He probably should have been studying or working, especially with the relentlessly productive Alex Young sitting next to him. When Leo had woken up, the window shade was already open, revealing Alex deep in some task. A pang of guilt hit him. Some people were more talented than you and worked harder than you. It made your own efforts feel almost pointless. But mostly, he was just lovesick. An excited energy buzzed under his skin at the thought of seeing Stella soon. In this state, reading a novel or scrolling through TikTok was possible. Actual work? Not a chance. He posted on Facebook, and besides the usual likes, his messenger started pinging. Connor Brighton sent him a message wishing him a safe flight. That reminded Leo of the dinner last night, where Alex had complimented Connor's cufflinks. Leo wouldn't have even noticed them otherwise. Connor had explained that he collected them, buying unique pairs when he found them. It occurred to Leo that his godfather had a whole collection of antique trinkets, including a string of old agate beads that Professor Gua had authenticated. They weren't particularly valuable, but they were real. The deep red stones were about the size of cufflinks. He could have a pair custom-made. It felt right to return the gesture. You couldn't just keep taking from people. Accepting small favors could lead to big obligations later. If Connor had treated them to dinner to get closer to him, Then he needed to offer something in return, even if he didn't have any real influence to help him with. It was all a bit complicated. This, he supposed, was the world of adults, a world of social debts and careful reciprocity. He'd never had to think about this stuff before. Jessica Monroe stood in front of a department store mirror, looking at herself in a new coat, sweater, and leather shoes. It felt unreal. She didn't know why her mother, Julianne, had suddenly developed a conscience and insisted on making up for lost time by buying her a new wardrobe, but she had been surprisingly generous. Despite Julianne's performance of maternal affection, Jessica's mind was racing. If you've never known happiness, you can accept its absence. But if she got used to this life, and one day Julianne vanished again without a word, just like before, she would break. She didn't let her mother buy much. Just one complete, presentable outfit. It was more than enough. For years, she had never worn anything from a real department store. Her clothes came from street stalls, wholesale markets, Amazon, and Temu. Next to the clothing store was a Zales. Jessica's eyes lingered on the display, and Julianne noticed. She graciously led her daughter into the jewelry store, even though she inwardly scoffed at it. To her, brands like Tiffany or Cartier had substance. Mall jewelry was just tacky. But her daughter had never been exposed to real luxury, so this probably seemed like the pinnacle. Julianne had managed to charm several husbands. Charming one girl was child's play. The moment she saw her daughter's gaze fall on the storefront, she swept her inside. She generously bought her a gold necklace and a bracelet, spending nearly $10,000. As Jessica excitedly put them on, Julianne covered the slight curl of her lip with her hand. "I'm glad you like it," she smiled. "It looks beautiful on you." In truth, she thought it looked cheap. Gold jewelry was for old women. Jessica ignored the unconcealed condescension in her mother's eyes. She loved gold. Gold could be taken to a pawn shop and turned into cash in an instant. From her brief time as a production assistant for a live streamer, she'd seen how some influencers were masters of selling, each with their own niche. They claimed to curate their own products, but most of it was chosen for them. They lacked the time or the industry connections. Some were born salespeople, while others had huge followings but couldn't move product to save their lives. She had an idea then. If she had some capital, she could source products herself. She could be the supplier, the one providing inventory for the influencers to sell. She would build the supply chain. Everything else was an illusion. A mother's love could be fake. But making money, that was real. She wanted to make money. Lots and lots of money. The sky was clear and bright. With no turbulence, the plane landed smoothly. The four of them split a cab back to campus. They hadn't even reached the university yet, just rounded the large bend in the highway that led to it. But already the air felt cleaner, the trees on either side lush and green. They hadn't noticed it in D.C., but coming back, the air really did feel sweet, the wind crisp and clear. After the bend, the road opened up, revealing the vast lake with the red brick buildings of the university on the far side. They crossed the bridge and pulled up at the edge of the student strip, getting out, retrieving their luggage, feeling their feet on solid ground. It was like their hearts had landed, too. Sean hopped out first, filming Leo as he stepped out of the cab. "We're back." He panned across the familiar scenery, the red buildings, the bustling student strip, the long, tree-lined avenue. Scenes they walked past every day without a second thought now felt welcoming, imbued with a newfound fondness after just a few days away. It was a strange human quirk. At home, you longed to travel. On the road, you longed for home, convinced there was no place better. Then, after a while, the itch to leave would return. Maybe the point of leaving was to more deeply appreciate what it felt like to come home. That's how they all felt now. They'd been sick of campus, bored out of their minds, but after a short time away, they missed it. It was like the days leading up to winter break, bursting with excitement for freedom, only to find yourself a few weeks later missing the routine, the classmates, the life of the school. Sean's camera work captured that feeling perfectly. The best cinematography, the best writing, is about conveying emotion. If you can make the viewer feel what you want them to feel, you've succeeded. They walked toward the dorms. It was dusk, the time of day when the campus sunlight was at its most gentle. Walking into the light, they watched the other students pass by. Even the security guard at the campus entrance looked friendlier, almost handsome. The underclassmen walking toward them seemed brighter, more attractive than they remembered. Before, it was always Alex who would get recognized, with students calling out greetings to him every few feet. But now, Leo noticed more and more eyes turning to him. It was probably because of the university's announcement about the scholarship he'd won and the promotional funding he'd secured. It was pinned on the campus website. Anyone who paid attention to school news would have seen it. There was a strange, thrilling feeling in the air. I can't believe a famous influencer goes to our school. An influencer from Northwood State. There was a sense of surprise, mingled with a bit of secondhand pride. Students were mostly innocent like that, happy to tell their friends, hey, that guy, he goes to my school. After his $10 million donation and the collaboration with the official university website, Leo had gone viral again. He may have been away, but the campus was buzzing with legends about him. It was evening, and the paths were crowded with people. It wasn't some TV drama where everyone gasped, look, it's the hot shot, but the stares were definitely there. Leo straightened his posture slightly, feeling a bit self-conscious, but then he relaxed. He had just over 4 million followers. Was he really going to start acting like a celebrity? The influencers with 20 or 30 million followers would probably need to be carried around in a sedan chair. He recalibrated his attitude and felt much more natural. He knew he wasn't that important. Life would go on as usual. Back on campus, the wind was cool, but the air was sweet and humid. It was a relief to breathe it in after the dry D.C. air that had given Jordan a nosebleed on their third morning. He took a deep breath and coughed. Meanwhile, in D.C., Ryan Hahn's cousins had flown home, and he was back at work, breathing in the capital smog. For some reason, he felt an emptiness in his chest. God, work was boring. He missed college. He envied his cousin for still being a student. He didn't want to be here. Maybe he shouldn't have graduated early. Maybe he should go to grad school. Slouching at his desk, Ryan Hahn felt genuinely lost. Back in the dorm room, the four of them settled in. Jordan collapsed blissfully onto his messy bed. It was a simple, unremarkable bed, but he'd missed it. This was the best place to play games, surrounded by his familiar den of comfortable chaos. Sean had missed his desktop computer. Editing was so much easier with a big monitor and a proper keyboard and mouse. The dorm hadn't changed much in a week, but it felt empty. Now that they were back, it instantly felt alive again. Alex dropped his bag, tidied up his things, and got ready to head out. He had a date, a sophomore who needed guidance on navigating the bewildering maze of college life. Leo also had a date with Stella. He couldn't stop smiling. Stella had offered to pick him up from the airport, but Leo had declined. He knew he'd want to hug and kiss her the second he saw her, and he felt a little embarrassed about doing that in front of his roommates. He didn't want to corrupt his sons. Besides, it was just easier for the four of them to take a cab together. He didn't want to trouble her, but he had made plans to meet her for dinner. A week apart felt like an eternity. After a quick cleanup in the dorm, night had fallen. He arranged to meet her at the Fountain Plaza, the one that never actually had water in it. Leo grabbed the gifts he'd brought for her. They weren't all expensive. A keychain from the gift shop at the Altar of Earth, a cute octopus plushie he'd found while shopping, a little dancing horse figurine. Before, Leo never would have bought such things. Now, he'd see something fun or interesting and buy it on impulse. Some things were a few bucks, others 20 or 30. One or two were a little pricier, over 100. He didn't overthink it. He just bought them. It was the kind of thing a new dad might do. One gift was more valuable. A small, painted clay figurine, no bigger than a child's palm. Professor Gwa said it was likely 1,000 years old, a lively Tang dynasty unglazed figurine of a court lady. She had a round face, a slightly oversized head, and a high, perky ponytail. Her arms were crossed coolly in front of her chest, and she wore a little dress. She was utterly charming. Professor Gwa was sure it was authentic, but said it wasn't prohibitively expensive. A similar piece had sold at a routine auction in 2019 for about $85,000. This one was probably worth around $100,000, given its good condition. Leo packed up the figurine along with the pile of adorable trinkets to give to Stella. But before he could present his gifts, she gave him hers. He had only just learned about cufflinks from Connor, and he now understood they were not cheap items. To be elegant enough for a man to want to wear them, they had to be exquisitely made. The moment they met, Stella handed him a small box. Inside were a pair of cufflinks, 2 round discs of vibrant, imperial green jade that seemed to glow with an inner light. The size and quality were perfect for a high-end ring. From what he had learned from Professor Gwa, Leo made a quick, amateur appraisal. A pair of stones like this had to be in the mid-six figures, maybe $500,000 or $600,000. The material wasn't just translucent. It had a steely, cold luster that probably made it even more valuable. My mom went to D.C., Stella explained. She bought your painting and went to an auction for fun. She picked up a few little things. I thought these were beautiful, so I asked her for them. I have a feeling she bought them for you anyway. My dad doesn't like green. He's more into rubies and yellow sapphires. When it comes to jade, he prefers other colors. Leo was stunned, feeling a little overwhelmed by the generosity. Please thank our mom for me. That's too much. Stella just stared at him. Our mom. What kind of name is that? Leo handed her the clay figurine. This is from our Godfather's collection, Tang Dynasty. She's really cute. I saw her and immediately thought of you, so I asked him if I could give her to you. They solemnly exchanged gifts, but there were no hugs or kisses. Not yet. At this hour, the campus was swarming with students heading out for dinner. After several days apart, there was a strange, almost formal feeling between them. After the exchange, Leo watched Stella put the pile of trinkets he'd bought into her bag and instinctively offered to carry it for her. It was a large, casual prototype made of soft leather. Leo recognized the triangular logo. He'd seen it in a James Bond movie, and Jordan had pointed it out once. It was a handsome bag, one that a guy could carry without looking out of place. He was starting to realize that many of Stella's bags were styles he could also carry comfortably. It was a subtle, thoughtful detail. Stella was dressed vibrantly tonight. She wore a pair of soft, woolen plaid pants in a striking blue. Her top was a mid-length, earth-brown trench coat that looked like a padded jacket with a dark brown collar. Underneath, she had on a light blue sweater with a loud, graphic pattern. She finished the look with dark brown ankle boots. With her slightly messy short hair, she looked energetic and cool. Leo couldn't keep the smile off his face. His heart was hammering in his chest. God, he loved it when she dressed like this. So cool, tall, and handsome, yet also fierce and sweet. When he kissed her, her lips tasted sweet. When he held her, he felt how, for all her sharp angles, her waist was soft and her legs were long. He loved her in ankle boots. Other people pinned you to the wall with their arms. Stella could pin you to the wall with her leg propped up high above his head. As they walked, their hands found each other. The night air was crisp and cool, but their clasped hands grew warmer and warmer. They went to Lucky's for dinner. He'd eaten plenty of fancy food in D.C., but he missed the food from school. The stir-fried beef with chili peppers, the rice, the sweet and sour cabbage, the simple meatball soup, it all tasted like home. Even now, tasting it again, Leo could tell that some of the ingredients weren't top shelf, but his stomach remembered the flavor. It was a familiar, comforting happiness. Normally, he would have gotten takeout for his roommates. But tonight, he was busy with his girlfriend. His sons would have to fend for themselves. After dinner, they went for a walk, circling the campus aimlessly. The only people who wandered around in the cold wind instead of finding a warm classroom were security patrols and couples in love. They walked off their meal, looping around the campus several times until they found themselves near the art building. The building was eerily quiet at night. It wasn't open to students after hours, and professors rarely came by. They had intended to walk along the lake toward the path by the old cemetery, but the winter wind was just too strong, too cold. Even a ghost would get its skull blown clean off. Somehow, their wandering led them to the art building. It was completely unintentional. Their legs had a mind of their own, leading them up the stairs as a hand slipped into Leo's pocket and produced a key. Inside the studio, it was pitch black. They didn't turn on the lights. The curtains were open, revealing the silhouettes of the large trees outside, stark against the sparse glow of the campus streetlights. There was no time to find a light switch. It felt like they had been apart for ages. They messaged every day, texts, pictures, voice notes, video calls, but none of it compared to touch. In the darkness, Leo's long fingers found Stella's slender waist, his hands slipping beneath her clothes. He pressed her against the wall by the door, his lips finding her forehead, the tip of her nose, her cheeks, her mouth. Finally, their lips met, a soft collision, breathing in each other's warm breath. He had imagined this moment 100 times while they were apart, and now it was real. Closer, an embrace, a kiss, a touch. His exposed hands were cool against her warm skin, tracing a slow path over the soft, yielding expanse. A pinch from someone you disliked would be painful, infuriating. A pinch from a lover was a delightful ache. Stella's hands clutched his shoulders. Her coat had slipped to the floor at some point. Her little blue sweater was a rumpled mess. The drawstring of her cool, loose-fitting blue plaid pants was now wrapped around Leo's hand. They never turned on the lights. Outside, the wind whipped the trees into a frenzy, their branches swaying and dancing, shadows overlapping in a chaotic, beautiful mess. Time with her always flew by. It was gone in a flash. Leo walked Stella back to her dorm before heading to his own. He didn't run into Jessica Monroe this time. He sprinted all the way back, terrified of getting locked out on his first night back. Luckily, it wasn't too late. His legs ached from the run. He really had to be more consistent with his workouts. Otherwise, he'd be out of breath after a few steps, with no stamina to speak of. Back in his room, Leo was a picture of pure, blissful satisfaction, a goofy grin plastered on his face. When Stella returned to her dorm, she saw Jessica and felt a flicker of guilt, though she wasn't sure why. Fortunately, Jessica was busy, typing furiously at her computer, and didn't seem to notice her. Jessica did, however, see Stella carefully arranging a collection of new, small figurines on her desk. She knew Leo was back. They must have been on a date. Stella would never buy such strange, childish things for herself. She could see that Stella seemed different tonight, unusually happy. Normally, she was a bit serious, hard to approach. But not tonight. As Stella went to wash up, Jessica sat in her old t-shirt and loose summer pants that served as pajamas. For all Julianne's talk of loving her child, she missed the details. It never occurred to her that if Jessica's day clothes were shabby, her sleepwear would be no better. This was why, even after 2 days of a magical, dreamlike motherly love, Jessica remained clear-headed. She felt like Julianne was constantly telling her how hard her life had been, asking for forgiveness and understanding, claiming she'd had no choice. Jessica got tired of hearing it and finally said, "I forgive you. I understand." But Julianne wasn't satisfied. Of course she wasn't. She had consulted a spiritual advisor, who told her that the forgiveness had to be genuine, from the heart, for her luck to truly turn. The advisor had even asked if she'd noticed a change, a return of good fortune, since reconnecting with her daughter. And as it happened, the stocks in Julianne's secret personal account had surged in the past few days. So yes, it seemed to be working. The money she had spent on her daughter was a pittance compared to her gains. So, even if her motives were selfish, she wanted to be good to her daughter. But after more than a decade apart, trying to connect with a grown woman was proving difficult. Jessica couldn't figure out what her mother was thinking, but she knew it felt wrong. As soon as she got back, she'd been glued to her computer. She had pawned the gold for $10,000 and contacted the company she used to work for as a live-stream assistant. She reached out to one of the influencers and offered to supply them with a new product, an adaptogenic wellness tea with traditional herbal ingredients. During her time there, she noticed that this particular influencer, while not conventionally attractive, was a great talker and passionate about health. Her sales for other products were average, but whenever she sold wellness items, her numbers skyrocketed. Jessica might have been working odd jobs, but she was still a college student. She knew how to think strategically. Her own health was poor, and she sometimes bought herbal teas herself. This particular one was inexpensive but effective. She played both sides, using a burner Instagram account to pose as a bulk buyer to get a good price from the manufacturer, and then acting as the supplier for the influencer. The best part was that most of these deals could be done online, without ever meeting in person. It was her first real venture, her first time using money to make money. She had no desire to be an influencer herself. Working that hard to sell things was still manual labor, in a way, and it would never make her truly rich. But if it gave her a start, she would do it. She was busy with all of this when she glanced over at Stella's desk, at the pile of toys, and saw the clay figurine of a little girl with a chubby, adorable face. She looked for only a second before turning away. She could picture him, carefully choosing each gift, presenting them to Stella with a heart full of joy. A small, sharp pain pricked at her own heart. But that was life. You couldn't go back, couldn't start over. You could only move forward. If you don't have enough love, you have to make a lot of money. I want to be the kind of girl who can be impulsive too, she thought. I want to be the one who buys you lots of gifts, without ever looking at the price. Back in the dorm, Alex had brought takeout. Tinfoil-wrapped wings seasoned with what tasted suspiciously like instant ramen flavor packets. The flavor was familiar. Not good, but not bad either. A testament to food science and a whole lot of sodium. But it was late in a dorm room, and it was food. As his sons, what more could they ask for? A graduated senior once said that she could drink all the fancy bubble tea in the world, but she'd always miss the school's artificially sweetened $1 milk tea. That was the best. Returning to the cramped dorm after staying in a hotel was an adjustment. The four of them were squeezed into one room, but it felt comfortable, familiar. Sean slept for a solid hour, feeling more rested than he had all week. The hotel bed had been too soft, the softest he'd ever slept on, and he hadn't gotten a decent night's sleep. Back on his wooden plank of a dorm bed, he was out like a light, snoring contentedly. The D.C. trip had been a whirlwind. Leo was busy, but Sean had been working nonstop, filming and editing, with almost no time to sightsee. To him, this was sightseeing. This work was a world away from toiling in the fields back home. On the barren plains of his hometown, making a living was a brutal struggle. He remembered his father collecting scrap metal, his small cart piled so high with junk that it dwarfed him. The image still made his eyes well up. But that was life. After his nap, Sean got up to edit. He couldn't just take the university's money and do nothing. He had to post a video of their return to campus. To maintain a daily upload schedule, you couldn't wait for big events. You couldn't have a donation one day, an award the next, and some other major event the day after. He wasn't a celebrity. Even celebrities only made appearances for specific promotions. Most of their lives were just normal. The ones who seemed to have a new event every single day were usually young, trending stars. It was partly because they were young and beautiful, but also because that lifestyle demanded incredible physical stamina. One night, they're in Singapore giving a concert until midnight, buying bubble tea for their fans, and the next morning they're in another city for a TV appearance, smiling and waving. It was more grueling than a special forces training exercise. They probably survived on 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night, their faces caked in makeup for close-up shots, always having to look perfect. They earned a lot, but they worked for every penny. What job wasn't hard work? Well, besides being a trophy husband, maybe. Smirking emoji Sean, fully rested, edited the footage of their return. He was getting good at this. He thought he was starting to understand the TikTok algorithm, but every time he meticulously edited a video, it would get mediocre views. Then he'd rush something, post a single, unedited clip, and it would inexplicably go viral. He couldn't figure out the pattern, but he had established a baseline for quality. No garbage content. Just keep it normal, clean, and, most importantly, real. Authenticity, Sean believed, was the foundation of their channel. They were documenting real college life. If they started faking it, people would eventually see through it. So today's post was simple. The return to campus, the familiar scenery. A 2-minute video might take 2 hours to edit, balancing the sound, color, and lighting to create an immersive experience where the viewer could feel the chill in the wind, the dampness of the rain, and smile when the people on screen smiled. The video of their return was well received, the likes pouring in. But gaining followers was a different beast. It happened in bursts, a sharp peak on the graph one day, followed by a plateau. It wasn't a continuous climb. Lately, Sean had received more than one job offer. After Ryan's uncle-in-law had promised him the moon, others had started reaching out through the TikTok account's DMs. One was from a well-known media company. The offer wasn't as insane as the one from Ryan's connection. No equity, but the salary was still incredible, something he never could have imagined before. Sean turned them all down. He knew his own worth. Leo had never treated him unfairly. In fact, Leo had taken the money he earned and donated it to Sean's hometown, a gift that would benefit his own family. Even a real brother might not do that much for you. So, he ignored the offers and stuck to his routine, filming, editing, and running the roommate chronicles. He filmed them eating their late-night wings, too. He filmed the fancy stuff, but he also filmed the everyday moments. People seemed to like the grounded content more. The 4 of them sat around, eating the wings Alex brought and some grilled vegetables Jordan had contributed, along with fruit Leo had brought back from his trip. Sean, as usual, took on the role of host, clearing the table, setting things out, boiling water for everyone. Even after a trip to the capital, their dynamic hadn't changed. Alex leaned back in his chair, feeling a deep sense of comfort. This was better, he thought, than sitting in some high-end club with Connor and Dylan Sloan, watching celebrities dance. Earlier today, he had given an autograph photo to that sophomore girl, and she had been thrilled. That was enough. He didn't need to do much more. He was starting to find this whole dating thing a bit tiring. He liked the sweet, innocent types, but constantly having to entertain a young girl got boring. And when he got bored, he moved on. He never lasted long. He envied Leo a little, but then he thought about Stella and decided he couldn't handle her intensity. But as long as Leo was happy, that was all that mattered. Sean's work ethic was now in overdrive. After he had blocked Megan, she had spread all sorts of nasty rumors about him. It was the classic story. The nice guy who helps everyone is a villain the one time he says no, while the jerk who does one good deed is hailed as a reformed hero. Maybe it was because of what Megan said, or maybe because Sean had started standing up for himself, but fewer girls were asking him for free labor this semester. Most of his classmates were busy with internships and new social circles anyway. They were all in that awkward phase between adolescence and adulthood. It was rare for a whole dorm room like theirs to still be on campus, not doing internships. Jordan was the most carefree of them all, a happy-go-lucky guy who spent his days playing games and hanging out in various campus group chats. He was their primary source of gossip. As he gnawed on a chicken wing, he announced, "Did you guys hear? My goddess, Jessica Monroe, I think her mom came to find her. And she's not just some normal mom. She's dressed like a super rich lady, carrying an Hermes bag and everything. Apparently, her parents divorced, and her mom remarried someone wealthy, and now she's back to make it up to her." Alex and the others shook their heads. They just gotten back. Stella mentioned her mom was back, Leo said, but she didn't go into detail. So, does this mean Jessica's going to be rich now? Sean asked curiously. She won't have to work so hard anymore. Jessica would never say that herself. Who's spreading this stuff? Alex was skeptical. A mother who remarries and ignores her daughter for years suddenly shows up right before graduation, making a big scene? Something feels off. Jordan, still chewing, pulled out his phone to show them a picture from group chat. My goddess looks amazing when she's dressed up, but she looks like she's lost a lot of weight. In the photo, Jessica was walking toward the camera, wearing a stylish coat, scarf, and boots, her long hair blowing in the wind. The picture was a candid shot, probably taken while she was talking to someone. It was true what they said. Clothes make the man or woman. She had always been pretty, but in a fresh, youthful way where you didn't notice the quality of her clothes. Now, she looked different. The clothes looked expensive, elegant. She wasn't wearing her usual white sneakers, but a pair of chic black boots. Her whole aura had changed. Her eyes sparkled, and the ends of her hair seemed to dance in the air. The next morning, Leo was up at 6:30. Back on campus, he switched to his winter schedule, a half hour later than usual since the sun rose later. He went to the communal washroom and splashed his face with cold water. The shock of it on his skin turned his cheeks red and jolted him awake. The air was frigid, biting. Back in the dorm, it was warm and cozy, but the air was thick with the smell of 4 guys living in close quarters. Opening a window would let the cold in. Keeping it closed meant marinating in their own funk. Still, it was better than before. Since Sean started filming regularly, they'd made an effort to keep the place tidy. Shoes were now neatly arranged on a rack by the door instead of scattered everywhere. Sean was already up, moving around quietly. Leo went to make his honey water. The water in the kettle was lukewarm, perfect for mixing with honey, which loses its benefits in boiling water. He stirred in a spoonful and drank the whole glass down. The system was insistent about his honey water regimen. He'd even discussed it with his godfather, who explained that the fructose and glucose in honey gently stimulate the intestines, helping with mild constipation and clearing out the system. It was practically a traditional medicine, safer and healthier than any diet product. Plus, the simple sugars were easily absorbed, providing a quick energy boost on an empty stomach. It was also good for the throat and had antioxidant properties. Of course, what worked for one person might not work for another. People with diabetes, excess stomach acid, or ulcers had to be careful. But for Leo right now, it was perfect. After his honey water, he made his mandatory pre-departure trip to the bathroom, a good habit for any college student to develop. Then he changed into his running gear and headed downstairs. He had a date to meet Stella at the Fountain Plaza. As he passed the basketball courts, he noticed Professor Reed's usual spot was empty. The absence of the campus's resident longevity expert made the morning feel a little incomplete. He snapped a picture of the large tree by the court and sent it to her. At this hour, she was surely awake. She replied almost instantly, "Good morning. Been away a few days, and I actually miss it. Looks like a beautiful day." Leo sent back a smiley face, put his phone away, and kept walking. The best part of being in love was this feeling. Walking to meet her, a smile spreading across his face, his steps light, his heart racing. The cold wind couldn't touch the fire inside him. Stella was already there, dressed in a Lululemon set that perfectly accentuated her tall, long-limbed figure. The outfit was snug without being restrictive, the kind of thing that only looked good on young bodies with no excess fat. The color was a departure for her, a pale pink with black accents. But on her, it didn't look saccharine, it looked fresh and clean. They started jogging toward the main athletic field. The track was sunken, surrounded by buildings that blocked the wind, making it ideal for exercise. The moment they saw each other, they both broke into smiles. As they ran, they found themselves under a large tree, completely alone in the early morning quiet. Leo couldn't resist. He pulled Stella into his arms and planted a kiss on her cheek. He just loved her so much, wanted to be close to her, wanted to take a bite out of her. Stella wiped the saliva from her cheek, watched him laugh and sprint ahead, and then chased after him. The mood before and after a night of passion was definitely different. Leo happily completed his running task, and then he and Stella went for a long-awaited breakfast bowl. The owner of the street stand had kept up with the times. For the winter, he'd set up 2 plastic tents, blocking the wind. Inside, a small electric space heater kept things surprisingly warm. It seemed a little risky, a space heater and plastic sheeting, but modern appliances were usually safe. Sitting inside the tent, eating a steaming deluxe version of the breakfast bowl was pure bliss. You could add pork liver, beef, sweet shrimp, fried dough sticks. Leo and Stella both ordered the luxury yacht version with all the toppings. They had both worked out hard enough to finish it. Leo always enjoyed eating with Stella. She ate so naturally, without any fuss. Everything with her felt comfortable. A sliver of insecurity crept in. Was it because she was so much more worldly than him, simply accommodating his level, that he felt so at ease? After breakfast, Leo got takeout for his sons, and Stella got some for Jessica. There had been a lot of gossip about Jessica lately, but they rarely talked about it. Leo wasn't an idiot. Constantly talking to your girlfriend about another girl was a one-way ticket to trouble. They parted ways at the Fountain Plaza. Even after being apart for days, they couldn't just stick together all the time. They both had things to do. In fact, Leo's schedule was packed. The university had called a meeting with him. His godfather had sent him a reading list and a thick book he was expected to memorize. He also had painting commissions to finish, one for General Ingram and another that Dr. Croft had arranged. Plus, he had to record a guided video for Dr. Shun's mindful restoration technique. Oh, and he had to deliver a gift to Paige Kennedy for her dog, Moose, a task from his godmother, and a gift from Ms. Miller's son, Cody. It was proper etiquette to bring back presents for your teachers, and since he didn't know what to get Ms. Miller, a gift for her son was the next best thing. He brought the breakfast bowls back to the dorm. Alex was just finishing up in the bathroom, combing his hair. Jordan was still a formless lump under his blankets. Leo distributed the food. As Alex ate, he reminded Leo, "I think the meeting today is your Bridgewater Fellowship induction. You should wear something formal." They notified all the current members, too. "We'll have to recite the oath." It felt like it had been a while. When Ms. Miller saw Leo again, she was taken aback for a moment. Boys grew up so fast. She remembered a shy teenager who would stand awkwardly, a bashful smile on his face whenever she looked at him. Now he stood tall and confident, his posture perfect. He spoke with his classmates earnestly, and when she called his name, he turned and broke into a warm, steady smile, as solid and reassuring as a pine tree. The university was holding a formal induction ceremony for its most outstanding Bridgewater Fellowship candidates. Besides Leo, there was a junior who had performed a heroic rescue. During his summer travels, he had seen someone fall into the water, called for help, and then jumped in to save them. The whole thing was witnessed by other students and caught on video. He hadn't been reckless. He had assessed the situation and acted. Afterward, he made sure the person was okay, declined any reward, and simply continued his vacation. The grateful family had later tracked him down and sent a commendation banner to the university. Another inductee was a junior, a renowned academic who had won a national-level competition. And the last was the star of the finance department, Chloe Preston. Today, she wore a tailored suit and glasses, looking impeccably professional. She, too, had been a candidate for some time. There were 4 of them in total. Seeing Chloe, Leo felt a sense of surreal distance. He remembered how he and his friends used to debate which girls on campus were the prettiest. In every university, there are always a few who shine brighter than the rest. Stella had always been intensely private, and Jessica, though well-known, came from a humble background. Chloe, on the other hand, was famously and unapologetically wealthy, the daughter of a bank president. Before, whenever he'd seen Chloe, she had never so much as acknowledged him. But today, she was incredibly warm, not at all aloof. Her voice was pleasant, her words thoughtful. In her suit, with her long hair draped over her shoulders, she smiled and adjusted her glasses in a way that seemed perfectly designed to match every guy's fantasy of the perfect girl, smart, successful, wealthy, and beautiful. Leo was currently the talk of the campus. The university's official website had even posted a message in strong support of him. It was hard not to know who he was. In the past, if a girl like Chloe had spoken to him so kindly, he would have been walking on air for days. He used to not even dare to look at her directly. Now, speaking to her up close, he realized she wasn't as breathtakingly beautiful as his memory had made her out to be. Why did he remember her as a peerless beauty? Her features were actually quite delicate, average at best. But combined with her poise, her style, and the aura of her family's status, she seemed magnificent. Now Leo just responded calmly. His perspective had shifted. He was no longer nervous. With his increased intelligence, he could distinguish between politeness and genuine interest. He no longer assumed any pretty girl who smiled at him was secretly in love with him. The 4 of them chatted for a bit. Chloe had apparently won an award for a comprehensive business plan she had developed for a banking startup. The heroic student who had saved the drowning person was named Liam Stone. He was tall and tanned, a picture of sunny confidence. He talked about his love for budget traveling, his goal to visit every part of the country during his college breaks. The academic champion was more reserved, but clearly brilliant. Sean had requested permission to film the ceremony. As the recipient of a university-sponsored promotional fund, such requests were now easily approved by President Grant. The university had nothing to hide. Transparency was welcome. The The ceremony began with the singing of the university's alma mater. Everyone stood. Afterward, President Grant, the head of the campus fellowship committee, gave a speech. As always, she was brief, praising and encouraging the young inductees. Then came the main event, the oath. Leo raised his right hand, faced the fellowship's banner, and repeated the words after the pledge leader, who was none other than Alex Young. Here, Alex was in his element. Leo, too, was completely serious. After the oath, he stated his name clearly. I, Leo Foster, do so swear. For some reason, the moment felt incredibly moving, a warmth spreading through his chest, his eyes growing misty. After the pledge, Leo was asked to speak as a representative of the new fellows. It was a small gathering, a few professors, a few students, some current members, more like a round table than a formal assembly, but the atmosphere was solemn. Leo collected himself. He didn't need to clear his throat. His voice was young and strong. He began to speak, his tone clear and steady, his pace unhurried. The content of his speech was standard, an expression of his commitment, his patriotism, his gratitude to his peers and mentors. It was solid, if not spectacular. After he finished, there was a period for open discussion. Alex was the first to speak, of course. Here, in his natural habitat, he was serious and articulate. Finally, President Grant gave her concluding remarks, and the ceremony was over. The whole thing took just over an hour. And just like that, Leo Foster was officially a Bridgewater Fellow. Sean filmed from a corner, capturing everything. The young faces, the solemn oath, it was surprisingly touching. As soon as it was over, he rushed back to edit. Leo and the other 3 new fellows exchanged contact information. From now on, they would be connected like scholars who had passed the imperial examination in the same year. As they moved through life, they would find themselves part of many such small, exclusive circles. After the ceremony, Alex had to stay behind to talk with the faculty advisors. Leo headed for the library. He walked down the stairs with Ms. Miller. Ms. Miller, I brought a small gift for Cody. I could drop it off this afternoon when he gets out of school. That would be wonderful. He's been asking about you. He hasn't seen you online for his 1 hour of game time. Leo's schedule had been chaotic in D.C., but he was glad to be back to his routine. He noticed that Ms. Miller seemed different, too. More confident, more radiant. She was dressing up a little more. It was nice to see. The strange fantasies he once had were long gone. A boy's journey from imagination to maturity was a process, and he was slowly making his way. They parted ways on the ground floor. As Sean jogged back to the dorm, the image of Leo taking the oath was seared into his mind. Hearing those words, seeing that scene, he felt a powerful surge of emotion, a sense of pride in being born under this flag, in this country. He already had the video planned in his head, a montage of a young man on campus, in class, studying, a professor lecturing, playing basketball, walking, laughing, eating, and over it all, a voiceover. I pledge my loyalty to the values of this fellowship, to uphold its principles, to fulfill my duties as a member, to honor its traditions, to protect its secrets, to serve with integrity, to work for the betterment of my community and my country, and to dedicate my life to that service. This was the life of a college student on TikTok. You ask what we're doing? We're studying. We're striving to be worthy citizens. We have moments of doubt, but deep down, we hold on to our beliefs. It's never too late to start trying. Let's go. Being back at school felt grounding. The whole D.C. trip had been amazing, an eye-opening experience, but there was an unreal, floaty quality to it. Listening to Connor talk about projects worth hundreds of millions felt like hearing a fantasy. And then there was Ryan Hahn, the D.C. trust fund kid with his Georgetown townhouse and his G-Wagon, who seemed to drift through life. Even his boss felt ephemeral, throwing around promises of equity like confetti. Ryan was a second-generation rich kid, but he was a world away from a factory owner's son like Jordan. And the art exhibition, a whirlwind of flattery and praise. It was all a bit much. The whole city felt like it was floating. There was a joke that D.C. was the city that brought the most happiness, because after living there, you could find happiness anywhere else. There was some truth to that. Returning to Northwood State, everything felt precious, a small, certain joy. The trees were beautiful, the lake vast, the professors kind, the students familiar. Leo walked into his usual study hall and saw the familiar NPC students. A wave of relief washed over him. This was where he belonged. There was a new face today, but thankfully his preferred golden throne by the window was still available. He greeted them and settled into his spot. From here, he could see the trees outside, the telephone poles. It was cold. There were no birds. Colin Edwards and Wendy Liu were surprised to see him. "You're back, Leo," Colin said, a little excitedly. Wendy smiled. "We thought you might not come back to study here anymore." "A student's got to study, right?" Leo laughed. "Starting today, I'm hitting the books." He pulled out some gifts he'd brought back. A few small boxes of fancy assorted cookies from a famous D.C. bakery. They looked beautiful, like little flowers from a palace pastry shop, though they tasted just okay. Still, they made for a nice, easy gift. He gave one box each to Colin and Wendy and a single cookie to the new student, who thanked him with genuine surprise. In return, they offered him yogurt. They were always prepared. Wendy gave him a healthy, low-sugar organic yogurt, while Colin handed him a bottle of Chobani. Leo accepted both. After the snack exchange, the atmosphere in the room felt much more relaxed. Leo sat down, habitually checked his phone, messaged Stella about his morning meeting, and then, realizing he was getting sidetracked, quickly put it away. Discipline was hard. If you committed to a life of early nights, early mornings, and diligent work, you'd probably end up with a diagnosis of moderate depression. Self-improvement, success, they all went against human nature, a constant battle against laziness, gluttony, and greed. He hadn't studied properly in a while, and his mind wandered. He was a mature host now. The system didn't even bother to scold him or flash the screen. He quietly put his phone away and got to work. He had brought the thick medical text his godfather had given him. He wasn't sure if he could master it, but Dr. Shen believed in him. And after being gifted a car, a house, and a room full of antiques, he couldn't just slack off. He decided to give it a try. The book was his godfather's own copy, filled with handwritten notes and annotations. He activated his time dilation buff and dove in. As he became absorbed, time seemed to dissolve. Wendy and Colin occasionally glanced over at Leo. The guy was on another level. Just a little while ago, he had earned a national-level professional title and won an international tea ceremony competition. Then he'd gone to D.C. for a solo art exhibition, sold a painting for over $1 million, and immediately donated the proceeds. It was the stuff of legend. Was there anything he couldn't do? $1 million was an abstract concept to them. But then they thought about their monthly allowance of a little over $1,000. It would take them almost 800 years to save up that much. The money Leo had donated was enough to support a normal college student for 8 centuries. And now, here he was back in his usual spot, flipping through a book at impossible speed, occasionally pausing to think or jot down a note. He never once looked at his phone. Before, they might have thought he was just showing off. Now, they knew he was genuinely studying, just in a way that was far beyond their own. The sunlight crept across the floor like a ruler measuring the day. When it had retreated from his desk back to the window, Leo finally closed the book, his mind buzzing. Entering a new field of knowledge was overwhelming. Most of it was foreign, but some concepts, like honey being a form of traditional medicine, were familiar. It felt a bit like chemistry, combining different elements to create a new, synergistic effect. Though he had crammed an immense amount of information into his head, he felt energized. He sipped a yogurt and let his brain cool down. He had made notes of a few things he didn't understand. He snapped a picture of his questions and sent them to his godfather. At that moment, Dr. Stephen Shun was with old Mr. Preston. He had just finished a meeting and was about to leave when Mr. Preston had summoned him. Now he was being asked to diagnose a patient, a man who, just an hour ago, had been giving a speech from podium while Dr. Shun was sitting in the audience, zoning out. Dr. Shun's only major patient had been Mr. Preston himself, and their relationship had started when neither of them was particularly prominent. It was like a barber who starts cutting a regular guy's hair for $30. The barber works his way up to senior stylist, charging $180 a cut. At the same time, the regular guy worked his way up from a $2,000 a month salary to $20,000. And the $20,000 a month client still comes to him for a haircut, happily paying the $180. It was a mutual journey. Today, his $20,000 a month client was introducing him to his $40,000 a month friend. Dr. Shin had no idea he was becoming a hot commodity in the D.C. elite circle. He was a skilled traditional doctor with an impeccable reputation. And then there was the story of the miraculous Golden Buddha. Everyone claimed not to be superstitious, but the powerful were the most superstitious of all. So now, he had a new patient. Dr. Shun, ever the professional, was not nervous. He took the man's pulse. The patient was generally healthy, but he suffered from severe lumbar pain. It was the kind of thing massage could greatly alleviate, but Leo wasn't here and Dr. Shun didn't think his own skills were as good as his son's. The man surely had his own excellent doctors, but they were probably far more tactful than Dr. Shun, who was known for his blunt delivery. After taking the pulse, Dr. Shun sat for a moment before preparing to leave. Just then, his phone buzzed with a notification from a priority contact. He pulled it out, and a warm, proud expression spread across his face. Noticing Mr. Preston's gaze, he said cheerfully, "Leo's back at school. He just sent me some questions about his studies. That kid, he's so dedicated. With that kind of diligence, he's bound to achieve great things." Dr. Stephen Shun was a man of few words unless the topic was his profession or something that genuinely interested him. During the earlier diagnosis, he had been strictly business, delivering his findings without any sugarcoating. The official's main issue was his lumbar spine, but Dr. Shun warned that the condition could lead to a heart attack if he overworked himself. The lumbar spine is governed by the Du meridian, the sea of yang meridians, which is connected to kidney qi, Dr. Shun stated directly. A deficiency in kidney essence or a blockage in the Du meridian can disrupt the heart-kidney connection. When the heart's yang is not nourished by the kidney's yin, it can lead to palpitations and chest pain, precursors to a heart attack. It was a serious diagnosis. A Western doctor would never have framed it that way. The diagnostic methods of traditional medicine often sounded mystical, almost like quackery, partly because many practitioners were in fact quacks. But the human body was an interconnected system. A problem in one area could trigger a catastrophe elsewhere. The visiting official was taken aback by the grim prognosis. It sounded like fear-mongering. He felt fine, apart from the back pain that everyone his age had. It was hardly a death sentence. Now he understood why, despite his renowned skill, Dr. Shun hadn't been recruited into the elite medical team in D.C. With a bedside manner like that, who could stand him? Even the legendary physician Hua Tuo only had one head to lose. Fortunately, Dr. Shun didn't belabor the point. He only became animated when he started talking about Leo to Mr. Preston. But the official's time was precious, and Dr. Shun didn't stay long. It was only as he was leaving that he fully understood. Mr. Preston had invited him over not just to see a new patient, but to send a message. The matter of the Golden Buddha was being quietly settled. People had already been making inquiries, not offering to buy it, but asking to borrow it for appraisal. By having him here, treating a current high-ranking official, Mr. Preston was making a public show of support. The inquiries would stop, and they did. The nuisance calls ceased. He did, however, get a call from a national news network about filming a documentary on the statue. Dr. Shun figured he might as well. You couldn't hide something like that forever. Better to be open about it. After Dr. Shun left, Mr. Preston remarked to his assistant, "That Shun, he doesn't know how to beat around the bush. But he doesn't speak nonsense either. He's right. At our age, we do need to be more careful." After finishing his yogurt, Leo let out a small burp. The system's mechanical voice chimed at his mind. Host has diligently studied the principles of traditional medicine, demonstrating comprehension and independent thought. Reward: buff, enhanced memory, 7 days. This buff will strengthen memory recall and accelerate memorization speed. Is it expecting me to memorize this entire book in a week? Leo eyed the thick volume. Maybe if I tear it into 7 pieces? No, that would get him a scolding. He was starting to think like a madman. He said goodbye to his 2 NPC study buddies and headed to his next destination, the library. The sun was out, and in the southern winter, a sunny day without rain was a gift. The campus was green, with a few winter-blooming flowers scattered about. It was nothing compared to the sea of cherry and pear blossoms in March and April, but it was beautiful in its own way. The lake glittered, and the air was crisp. Leo walked slowly, taking the long way. Sometimes, a person needed to be alone to walk and think. It was a buffer, a moment of quiet contemplation. He wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just letting his mind go blank, watching the ripples on the water, the yellowing grass by the path, the clouds in the sky. His phone rang, shattering the peace. It was his mom. "Mom," he answered. "I got the scarf," she said. "Your Aunt Sky is here to pick hers up now. This is nice quality, really thick. Looks like real wool. How much was it? It looks like it must have been over $40, right?" Leo felt a pang of guilt. He had torn off the price tags before shipping them. If his mom saw the 5-figure price, he'd be on the receiving end of a very long lecture. "Yeah, about that. It was on sale at the mall. I thought it would look good on you, better than on a celebrity, so I bought it." "It is nice," his mother, Tammy, said, admiring herself in the mirror on her end of the line. The scarf was reversible, with a large plaid pattern on one side and a pictorial design on the other. "Don't go wasting your money. Do you have enough? I can send you some more." "I have money, Mom." "What money? Didn't you say the person who bought your painting did it as a favor to your professor, and you donated it all anyway?" "Mom, I haven't told you yet. My godfather gave me an apartment. It's right near Georgetown. Do you and Dad want to come visit D.C. sometime?" You could see it. What? What did you say? Her voice shot up several octaves. He gave you a house? Near Georgetown? That must be insanely expensive. Leo held the phone a little further from his ear. He said he wants me to study traditional medicine with him. And so I'd have a place to stay in D.C. He transferred the deed to me. It's no big deal. Listen, I gotta go. I'm at the library. Okay. You go. We'll talk later. Tammy hung up, still in daze. She had just been about to send her son a couple $100 out of maternal pride. Now this. His Aunt Skye, who had just arrived, chimed in. Tammy, is this the scarf Leo bought me? This is Burberry. It's worth thousands. That boy is really going places. He didn't forget his old aunt. Tammy stared at her. That little liar. He told me both scarves together were less than $100. For the older generation, the phrase, I have to go study, was a magic spell that ended any phone call instantly. But Tammy was still reeling. What was this Burberry thing his aunt was talking about? A piece of cloth for thousands of dollars? That was insane. It's a designer brand, Skye explained, adjusting the luxurious fabric around her neck. My boss wears their shirts. You can tell by the plaid pattern. They cost a fortune. As the two women chattered, Tammy kept sneaking glances at herself in the mirror. She grumbled about her son's frivolous spending, but somehow, knowing the price made the scarf look even better. Leo walked into the library. It was much busier than the study hall. The library had heating, which made it a popular spot. But the warmth in the crowd made it a less than ideal study environment. A slightly cool room was always better for concentration. It had been a while since he'd been here, but he still loved the atmosphere. It was filled with young people, all focused on books and learning. It was an inspiring sight, even if you had to ignore the couples holding hands under the tables, clearly not studying. He headed to the stacks. A daily trip to a library or a bookstore, picking a book at random, felt like drawing a card from a deck, a random chance to gain new knowledge. After his time in D.C., sitting in Mr. Preston's study or General Ingram's home, he had felt the gaps in his own knowledge acutely. You can't carry a library with you, but you can carry the knowledge from one. Talking to people on that level, he found himself occasionally hitting a wall, a conversational dead end. A high IQ didn't equate to a vast knowledge base. You still had to do the reading. He wandered through the aisles until he found a shelf bathed in sunlight. He pulled out a book, 1875, A Year of No Consequence by Elias Thorne. He'd heard Alex mention it a few times. It was a classic, apparently, one that Alex had in his family's extensive library. That was the difference in their upbringings. For Leo, Sean, and Jordan, acquiring knowledge was an active pursuit. For Alex, it was simply part of his environment. Leo had always assumed the book was a dense, intimidating historical tome, but it was surprisingly slim. He learned it was written by an American historian and had first been published by Yale University Press in 1981, becoming a standard text in many universities. History had never been his strong suit. The book wasn't a heavy brick, so he decided to give a read. He found a comfortable chair, took a sip of water, and began his task. New mission, read history. Progress, 1/100 reward. Master the historical knowledge of the year 1875. Special reward, a lottery draw upon 100% completion. He opened the book and stepped back in time. He saw a nation grappling with the failures of Reconstruction, a government riddled with corruption, and great men finding themselves powerless against the relentless tide of history. An industrialist tries to enact reforms, but is crushed by monopolies. An honest politician tries to fight graft and is driven from office. A brilliant general proposes new strategies, but is ignored by a system that values political connections over military genius. A philosopher challenges the established social order and is ostracized. It was a completely new way of looking at history, different from any textbook he'd ever read. The author's perspective was so compelling that you couldn't help but be drawn in. Thorne proposed a grand, sweeping view of history, arguing that individuals, even the most powerful emperors and statesmen, have very little real agency. You think you can change the world, but your efforts are ultimately smoothed over by the immense inertia of time. History has its own momentum, and you're mostly just along for the ride. He read about President Ulysses S. Grant, a brilliant general who found himself trapped in the White House, fighting a losing battle against the political machine of his own party. He was a prisoner in his own administration, and his only act of defiance was to retreat from public life. He was, in a way, just like Leo's workhorse classmates. He had tried to make a difference, toggled between fighting and giving up, and ultimately chose to retreat. President Grant finally realized, Thorne wrote, that he was, in effect, a prisoner in the White House. When Leo finished the book, his head was spinning, filled with new perspectives. He felt like he finally understood the political structure of that era. Reading progress, 100 out of 100. Initiating lottery draw. Host has diligently read the bestseller 1875, A Year of No Consequence, forming unique insights and adopting a new perspective on history. Reward. The calligraphic prowess of Thomas Jefferson, practice time required. Jefferson, under the strict tutelage of his mentors, developed exceptional penmanship. However, his mentors, fearing he would become complacent and distracted by artistic pursuits, advised him, a leader should value virtue over artistry. Leo blinked. That sounds exactly like something a modern parent would say. He had spent the morning immersed in the Gilded Age. Now, it was lunchtime, and the library was starting to empty out. It was still quiet. People here were considerate, taking phone calls outside and using headphones. Picking a book at random was an interesting experience. If you ever feel stuck in life, go to a bookstore or a library, find a book that catches your eye, and just start reading. When you're lost, read. It was a completely different way of acquiring knowledge than scrolling through TikTok. Reading a book, the act itself, was a form of progress. Leo snapped a picture of the book cover and the library for his Facebook feed. His posts were infrequent, but consistent. His last one had been a 9-photo grid from D.C., which included pictures with General Ingram and his son. Not many people in his friend list would recognize them, but those who knew, knew. And the ones who knew were smart enough not to comment. His roommates were meeting for lunch at Lucky's. They had to make up for lost time. The food in D.C. was good, but the prices were astronomical. A few $100s felt like the starting point for a decent meal. The $8,000 scholarship that felt like a fortune on campus wouldn't even cover a late-night snack in the capital. Back at school, things were blessedly normal. 4 of them could eat their fill at Lucky's for just over $100. Leo treated them. They ordered 4 meat dishes: stir-fried beef with chili peppers, steamed pork with rice powder, braised fish, and kung pao chicken, along with sautéed vegetables, a plate of corn fritters, Jordan's signature dish, and a simple vegetable and tofu soup. The soup was surprisingly good. It was just simple broth and greens, the kind of thing you'd never find in a Michelin-starred restaurant where the soups were always rich and heavy. Even with his enhanced palate buff, Leo couldn't find much to fault. Lucky's was popular, so the ingredients were always fresh, and the owner had perfected his small menu. The kitchen was a chaotic, smoky place, but the food came out with a fiery, fresh-from-the-wok energy that you couldn't find in fine dining establishments. Aside from Jordan, who had already snacked in the dorm, everyone had at least 2 bowls of rice. Sean, who was always lean, had 3. Alex, feeling like he'd gained weight in D.C., had a modest bowl and a half. After lunch, they walked back to the dorm for a nap. On the way, they passed the campus bookstore, and Alex said he needed to buy a book. The others followed him in. The most prominent displays were for GRE and civil service exam prep books, alongside the latest bestsellers and perennial favorites. Alex picked up a thick, intimidating-looking book with a red cover and went to pay. Leo browsed but didn't buy anything. At the checkout counter, a young woman stood with her head down, crying, while another girl, slightly heavier set, lectured her as she worked. The shelves aren't wiped. The counter is a mess. The mugs aren't washed. It was like this yesterday, and it's still like this today. What have you been doing all day? And why are you crying? Am I not telling the truth? Crying isn't going to solve anything. When you get a real job and your boss criticizes you, are you just going to cry? I'm not your boyfriend. I'm not going to coddle you. If this happens again, I'm telling the manager. It was clearly a shift change. The heavier set girl, though sharp-tongued, was incredibly efficient. When Alex approached the counter, she immediately apologized. Sorry about that. I lost my temper. That'll be $56. Do you have a rewards card? It's 12% off. Alex gave her his phone number, and she briskly completed the transaction, bagging the book with a smile. All the while, the other girl just stood there, silently weeping. The bookstore hired students for work study. They were cheap and generally reliable. As they left, Leo reflected on the scene. Before, his sympathies would have been entirely with the crying girl. He would have seen the other girl as a bully. But now, as a senior thinking about the real world, his perspective had changed. The one who was lecturing was also the one doing all the work, maintaining a professional demeanor with customers despite her frustration. The one who was being criticized just stood there, contributing nothing but tears. Maturity, perhaps, was when you stopped automatically siding with the person who seemed weakest. He found himself feeling more sympathy for the hard-working girl, who was getting paid the same as her useless partner. That girl was pretty efficient, Alec commented. I know her, Sean added. Her name is Hannah Chun. We were in the same work-study orientation. Sean wasn't exactly a social butterfly. Even though he'd seen the girl before, he doubted she knew his name. He'd only noticed her because she was incredibly efficient and got things done. That's just how Sean was. He rarely made the first move. An extrovert might see someone once and consider them a friend the next time they met. But for an introvert, you could see someone 3 times, and if they didn't say hello first, you could pretend you'd never met. The worst part was accidental eye contact. It felt like an introvert's jaw had to click into place before they could even think about speaking, like a rusty hinge. Leo got back to the dorm for a half-hour nap. It was a solid, deep sleep. He woke up still in his room. No time travel, no reincarnation. Just the familiar hum of Jordan, who'd get so into his game that he'd start humming along with the soundtrack, even with his headphones on. Alex was out. He'd returned earlier to freshen up before heading out again, clutching one of his massive, red-covered textbooks. The fact that Alex could actually read those things proved he was on another level. Sean was editing, headphones on, his face illuminated by the shifting colors of screen. He had the same intense, slightly disheveled focus as someone scrolling through an endless feed of TikTok dance videos. Leo sat up and stretched, reluctant to leave the warmth of his comforter. It was cold out, but a nap couldn't last too long, or he wouldn't be able to sleep at night. 30 minutes was perfect. Yawning, he got out of bed. The room was a state of organized chaos, stuff everywhere. Outside, the sun was bright, and the moss on the windowsill that Alex had been watering was, miraculously, still alive. Leo got dressed and headed out. He hadn't seen Moose in a while, and actually missed the big guy. He knocked on Paige's door. When she opened it, Moose came barreling out, a pink bow perched on his head and a little padded racing jacket strapped to his body. The dog's bald-looking head slammed affectionately into Leo's chest, paws scrabbling at his shirt. It was a good thing they were friends. A stranger would have been terrified. Paige stood behind the door, watching Moose smother Leo with affection and Leo return it by ruffling the dog's head. The sight made her teeth ache with a weird sort of jealousy. Only after greeting the dog did Leo remember its owner. He looked at Paige and noticed she was wearing a matching outfit, black jeans and the same cool, padded racing jacket as Moose. Her chestnut curls were casually clipped back on either side, giving her a quirky, almost K-drama heroine vibe. Under the jacket, she wore a tiny crop top sweater that showed off both her impressive curves and her midriff. Leo averted his eyes quickly. "Is your throat better?" Paige blinked. "You remember that?" "Of course it's better." She wanted to punch him. "What did my aunt have you bring me?" she asked, changing the subject. Leo pulled out 2 bracelets made of large, milky white crystal beads. They had been repurposed from an antique necklace. Grace Shun had kept one for her daughter and given him one for each of her nieces. "My godmother said one is for you and one is for your sister." Paige took them and immediately slipped one onto her wrist. The beads were huge, their luster more of a soft, pearly glow than a stark white. Against her pale, slender wrist, it looked beautiful. "Thanks. I'll give my sister hers this weekend. Did you get me anything from the Capitol?" Leo hadn't even considered getting Paige a gift. That particular wire was just missing from his brain. He had, however, gotten something for Moose. He passed a pet store and picked up a small, bone-shaped charm on a loose leather cord. It would be a more comfortable, stylish alternative to Moose's regular collar on walks. But he bought nothing for Paige. His mind had gone completely blank. Now, pulling out the cord and then stuffing it back in his pocket felt wrong. Paige's eyes landed on the thing in his hand, a cool little bone necklace. Her face lit up, and she happily fastened it around her neck. It actually looked pretty cool, the little bone landing right in the center of her chest. "But it's from a pet store. I'm worried you'll kill me when you find out." Paige didn't seem to care that the cord looked inexpensive. She was beaming. "Hee hee, I have a gift for you, too," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I earned my own money. A ton of it. Remember how you told me to do something I wanted to do? Well, after that shrimp head girl thing went viral, some company started paying me to try their snacks on my live streams. I just eat their stuff, and they pay me and give me an affiliate link. It's crazy. I sold over 2,000 bags of calamari jerky in one stream. Over 6,000 people were watching. She had been saving up. It was the first time she'd ever earned her own money. Before, she'd spent her family's money without a second thought, buying whatever caught her eye. But now that she'd earned it herself, she found herself hesitant to spend it. Even though the money came in fast, she made over $10,000 in a week. It was hard work. She had to talk, watch the screen, respond to comments. Most people were nice, calling her cute, but some called her dumb or slow. Others just stared at her chest. But she had done it. She'd earned a 5-figure sum all by herself. The first thing she wanted to do was buy Leo a gift. After looking for a long time, She'd chosen a Mont Blanc fountain pen with a custom leather case embossed with the initials FH. It had cost her over $9,000. The pen was stunning, the brand's emblem on the cap made of tiny paved diamonds. Leo watched as Paige presented the brand new pen to him like a treasure. She was still wearing the little bone chain he'd bought for her dog. His guilt intensified. I was just talking, he mumbled. You're earning money because you're awesome at it. Hey, maybe you should give me that chain back. I can get you a new one next time. This color doesn't really suit you. No way, I think it looks great. Even with his newly increased intelligence, Leo had no idea how to handle this. He accepted the pen, not quite daring to look at Paige's bright, energetic smile. Feeling flustered, he grabbed Moose's leash and made a hasty escape, saying he was going to take the dog for a walk. Moose, bundled in his little jacket, seemed a bit self-conscious. He was usually happy to get dirty, but the clothes made him wary of puddles. Still, the dog knew the routine, dragging Leo straight to the breakfast burrito stand to beg for a sausage. Moose wasn't afraid of the cold, but he hated the heat, and his fur was thick. His owner insisted on the jacket, though. It did keep his belly clean, but when it was time to pee, he worried he'd hit the vest, making lifting his leg an awkward maneuver. Leo bought a burrito for himself and a grilled sausage for Moose. At the stand, the owner expertly spread the tortilla, while sausages sizzled on the roller grill, dripping and smoking, filling the air with a delicious aroma. Man and dog waited patiently. The campus breakfast burritos were piping hot. The tortilla itself was the perfect mix of chewy and crisp. The owner boasted that he'd been making them for decades, and that his batter, which included a secret measure of green bean flour, was a family recipe. Leo couldn't taste the green bean flour, but the crispy fried strips inside were incredible. Watching the owner press down on a sheet of the crisp, snapping it in half, was deeply satisfying. The soul of the burrito, however, was in the sweet bean paste and chili sauce. The guy would also add a spoonful of his homemade pickled relish, radish, and mustard greens that was salty and a little spicy. Paired with the crisp, the sauces, and the fragrant tortilla, it was perfection. And Moose? He just loved the sausage. His preference was pure and simple. And he loved coming here with Leo. It was like his big brother was treating him to his favorite snack, and he'd wait with a dignified air. Once they both had their food, they found a spot out of the wind and ate right there at the stand. The burrito guy struck up a conversation with Leo. Hey kid, I saw that video you posted. The one about the spicy rice cake place? Old man Shing's business is booming now. He's slinging rice cakes all day. My burritos are pretty good too, you know. How about you do a little promo for me? Your food and the dogs, it's on the house from now on. Leo felt a little awkward, still holding the man's burrito. But he wasn't a product promoter. Both Alex and Jordan had advised him that if he wanted to build his channel for the long term, he couldn't get distracted by small profits, or even big ones. Once he started doing sponsor content, the nature of his account would change, and that kind of rapid growth would be hard to maintain. Before he could figure out how to refuse, the owner of the Next All Over, who sold breakfast biscuits, chimed in with a laugh. Chen, you cheapskate. Your burritos cost what, a few bucks? People pay tens of thousands for a promotional video. Besides, the kid's a senior. He's only got a year left. Even if he ate here for the rest of his life, wouldn't cover the cost. Chewing his burrito, Leo said slowly, Your burritos really are delicious, sir. How about I ask one of the professors in the student government if we can organize a food festival for the student trip? I could come by and try something from every stall, film it all. It'd be a big event. He was always eating on the student trip. If every owner asked him for a video, he'd be overwhelmed. Taking money felt wrong, but refusing was awkward. Organizing a big food festival, on the other hand, was something the university would probably love. President Grant was always looking for positive publicity for the school, and having a great food scene was a definite plus. Were there foodies out there who chose a college based on its cafeteria? Probably. Leo said goodbye to the burrito guy and continued walking Moose. He got in touch with Alex and Ms. Miller to pitch the idea. As student body vice president, Alex was semi-retired, but he wouldn't officially hand over the reins until graduation. Can't have your influence fade before you're even out the door. Leo started a group chat, and Alex thought a food festival was a great idea, certain that sponsorships would be easy to find. Ms. Miller, now working in the university's administration office, was still learning the ropes of her new role, but she agreed it was a promising proposal. They could handle the rest. Leo put his phone away and kept walking with Moose. He felt a little more mature. In the past, if someone had asked him for a favor like that, he would have either awkwardly refused or reluctantly agreed, neither of which felt good. He was learning there were other options. Just then his phone buzzed again. It was a message from a middle school classmate he hadn't spoken to in ages. the son of some department head. Word was he was doing well for himself. Leo noticed the guy had just liked one of his recent Facebook posts. "Hey man, need some cash quick. Can you spot me 10K? I'll pay you back at the end of the month." Leo was baffled. The last time he'd seen this guy was during the holidays last year. Leo had been eating barbecue at a roadside stall like a little kid, and the guy had rolled up in a BMW with a girl in the passenger seat, lowered the window to say hi, and then smoothly drove off. They were living in different worlds. His Facebook feed was a curated stream of expensive cars, fancy apartments, pets, beautiful women, and exclusive clubs, a highlight reel of a perfect, enviable life. For a college senior struggling to find an internship, seeing that kind of feed could be brutal. It wasn't jealousy, exactly, but the contrast was stark. Leo rarely looked at his page and almost never liked his posts. They had zero contact. Why on earth would he be hitting up a broke college student for money? His circle of friends and family surely included people much closer to him. A request like this, out of the blue, either meant he was in some kind of trouble he couldn't tell anyone about, gambling, something illegal, or he was just trying to get a free handout. Leo was direct. "Sorry, man, I'm still in school. Don't have that kind of money." Curious, he texted his dad, Ray Foster, and asked what the classmate was up to. His dad replied, "He's gotten into some trouble. I think he's addicted to online gambling. You stay away from that." That confirmed it. At least it wasn't a real emergency. When Leo checked his phone again, he saw that the classmate had unliked his post. Leo just stared at the screen. Wow, that must be inexpensive, like $10,000. He used to find it so hard to say no. Now he realized it wasn't a big deal. He hadn't lost 10 grand, and the guy hadn't even cussed him out. The worst he did was take back a like. A moment later, Leo saw the guy had posted a new status. "You walk along, and then your friends just disappear." Huh. We disappeared a long time ago. We were never really friends. Was that about him? Probably not. Leo shrugged it off. He'd said no. The guy hadn't exploded, just posted some vague, cryptic message. It wasn't his problem. He put his phone away and went back to running around with Moose. The dog was thrilled to be reunited with his hairless brother. He tugged Leo back and forth across the field. If Moose could throw a ball, he would have tossed it with his paw and made Leo fetch. That was the best game in the world, in his opinion. He could bite the ball, but throwing it was the tricky part. Leo tossed the ball, Moose brought it back, and they played until they were both happily exhausted. A smile spread across Leo's face. Just then, the mechanical voice sounded in his mind. Host has learned to think rationally and refuse unreasonable requests, reducing internal conflict. Reward, basic item, buff, spiritual mentor, 1 day. With this buff active, you can skillfully guide and persuade others. Your persuasion success rate will increase by 80%. As long as you're not asking someone to do something that violates basic human principles, they will most likely agree. Leo's mind immediately went to one place. I wonder if I can persuade a certain young lady into some extracurricular activities. He played with Moose for nearly an hour, and his mood soared. He felt relaxed, his mind finally at peace. You always hear about wellness gurus dying young or hyper-disciplined people falling into depression. It's because they're always wound so tight, never truly letting go. The system had pushed Leo to be incredibly disciplined, but there were moments when he felt himself teetering on the edge of burnout. It went against his fundamentally lazy nature. He was a laid-back guy suddenly forced into a relentless hustle, chasing a carrot on a stick. At times, he was bound to crash. Exercise helped. Romance helped. But the most complete, purest form of relaxation came from playing with Moose. A dog has no ulterior motives. All it cares about is whether you're having fun, whether you're running together. It doesn't matter if your fur isn't long enough or you can't pee far enough. All that matters is running and barking. Woof, woof, woof. Leo had a blast with Moose, and petting his furry head was incredibly de-stressing. Maybe boys were just like dogs at heart. Their roughhousing always involved tackling someone and pinning them down, not unlike a playful pounce. Leo took a video of Moose and sent it to Liam Ingram. He wanted to show Liam's retired military canine, Ranger, that his non-service counterpart, Moose, was also living a pretty happy life. Admittedly, Moose's diet couldn't compare to Ranger's. As a service dog, Ranger had a strict meal plan. A special ops K9 like him had a daily food budget of around $60 to $80. And that was just for the raw ingredients, meat, vegetables, and so on, not including the chef's salary. It was a higher standard than that for an ordinary soldier because of a dog's faster metabolism. His diet was meticulously balanced with vitamins, protein, deep-sea fish oil, beef, and minerals. Moose, on the other hand, was a little chubby. He could probably use more exercise. Leo sent the video with a message. "Tell Ranger I said hi." Liam replied. Okay, Leo. Got it. Leo was a true character. He had classes and couldn't make it to see Leo off in the capital. A third-generation military kid and academy cadet was genuinely busy. They didn't have time to be out causing trouble all day. But what really got Liam was that upon returning to school, Leo wasn't asking him to pass on greetings to his father or grandfather. He was saying hello to his dog. After their walk, Moose's sides were heaving, and the bottom of his little vest looked a bit tight. Leo undid a button, and the dog seemed even happier. He put Moose back on a leash as they headed back. He was a large dog, and an unleashed one could frighten people, especially children. They walked slowly, strolling through campus. Leo looked up at the trees. Many of them bore fruit. The orange trees were beautiful, their bright reddish-orange fruit hanging from the branches and releasing a faint citrusy scent. The mango trees only had a few small mangoes left this time of year. Most were pruned to prevent them from falling and making a mess. Sometimes, though, you could find a perfect little mango on the ground, not yet bruised or blackened. It would be perfectly ripe, incredibly sweet and fragrant. Not just sugary sweet, but a rich, complex flavor with a hint of tartness that came from growing naturally, without being forced for yield. There were also starfruit trees. The fruit was a yellowish green at this time of year, almost ripe and not so sour anymore. Not many people liked them, though. The flavor was a bit strange. Locals might eat the ripest ones fresh, but most were used to make preserves. Leo happened to find one that had just fallen. It was still a little green, a perfect 5-pointed star. He offered it to Moose, who sniffed it once and turned his head away. Leo couldn't help but laugh. As he bent down to rub Moose's slightly balding head, he felt someone watching him. He looked up and saw Jessica Monroe and the woman who had bought his painting, Ms. Ju. He hadn't seen Jessica in days, and she looked completely different. The photos in the group chat didn't do it justice. Seeing her in person, the transformation was staggering. She wore a stylish gray coat, a soft sweater, a short black skirt, and sleek, seamless stockings that hugged her long, slender legs. Her feet were in a pair of elegant little leather shoes. Her long, silky hair cascaded over her shoulders. Most girls didn't wear their hair down like that. It was more common on TV. Maybe it required a certain type of hair or face shape. But Jessica had always worn her hair long and loose, and walking toward him now, she looked like she'd stepped out of a manga. She was walking with Ms. Ju, listening as the older woman extolled the virtues of studying in Singapore, how clean and beautiful it was, how civilized the people were, blah, blah, blah. Jessica found it hard to listen. Any normal teenager would feel uncomfortable hearing someone gush about how superior another country was. What was with that arrogant tone? Her life had been hard, but that was because of her family, not her country. In fact, her country and the people around her had been good to her. She had grown up safely and received help from many people. She didn't hate the place she was born. So no matter what Ms. Ju said about Singapore's air being sweeter, Jessica simply refused. I don't want to study abroad. I'm going to get a job right after graduation. I'm an adult. I don't need you to worry about me. Faced with her daughter's stubbornness, Julianne was about to lose her mind. She was trying to be patient, but she couldn't understand what was so great about this place. If it were New York or fine, but this wasn't even a major city. Julianne just wanted her daughter to leave with her. She had no intention of buying property or putting down roots here. As they walked, her daughter suddenly slowed. Julianne looked ahead and saw the young man with the starfruit, teasing a dog. She recognized him instantly, the young artist. So that's it, Julianne thought. It's because of him you don't want to leave. You stubborn girl, making up all those excuses. Leo stood up, holding Moose's leash as they approached. Hi, Jessica said first, her legs pressed nervously together. It was the first time she'd seen him since her makeover. Putting on the new clothes, new underwear, new shoes, none of it had felt strange. They were better quality and more comfortable than anything she'd ever owned, especially the bra, which fit perfectly and gave her support. But standing in front of Leo now, all her courage evaporated. She felt a sudden urge to cry. Why couldn't this have happened sooner? She thought. She wished that when she'd first met him, she could have been wearing new clothes and new shoes, without a gambling addict father and a mother who'd run off. Just clean and pure. Instead, she summoned all her strength to smile and say that one word. Hi. It was like a greeting between strangers who were once friends. Long time no see, but you've been in my heart this whole time. They didn't say anything else. Just that single greeting as they passed each other. A moment later, Leo's phone buzzed. A transfer of several $1,000s from Jessica, with a note, repayment plus interest. Another message followed. Thank you. Leo paused, then typed back. You're welcome. Keep it up. Leo had been asked for money and refused, and then been paid back a debt, all in the same day. He knew Jessica would pay him back eventually, but it was still a nice feeling. Even though it was your own money, getting repaid always felt like a windfall, like an unexpected bonus. Go ahead, lend someone money and see for yourself. He and Jessica had just exchanged greetings. He gave a slight nod to Ms. Zhu, but Julianne was about to say something when her daughter pulled her away. Julianne thought her daughter was even prettier than she had been at that age. Better figure, slimmer, more curves, but her brain was nowhere near as sharp. If you like him, either confess your feelings or give him up, she said. You haven't met enough impressive men. Come abroad with me. I'll introduce you to plenty of them. You're still young. You've seen too little of the world. Once you meet more people, you won't be so fixated on what's right in front of you. Jessica's face hardened. I've told you, if you want to show your maternal love and make amends, fine. But don't interfere in my life. Otherwise, please leave immediately. Julianne sighed. Fine, I won't say any more. You're as stubborn and pig-headed as your father. Jessica hated being told she was like her dad. She worked so hard precisely so she wouldn't be like him. But hearing it from Ms. Zhu's mouth just made the knot in her chest tighten. You don't like that man. You look down on him, and you look down on the child you had with him. You'll eventually leave again, without a word. It seemed no matter how hard you tried, you could never escape your family. She reread his reply. You're welcome. Keep it up. Keep it up. She took a deep breath and recalibrated. It's okay. Don't think of her as a mother. Think of her as a boss. That made it easier. If your boss is paying you, you can put up with some emotional baggage. Just pretend she's farting. The wind tossed her hair. She had always grown wild, never as strong as the other trees, but she had fought hard to put down roots. Keep it up, Jessica. Leo took Moose back to Paige's apartment. She had already returned to her own dorm. She discovered that once you start working hard and see results, you actually want to keep working. It was terrifying. The initial motivation was unclear, boredom, maybe, or a little bit of pride. A desire to show Leo she could do things to make him look at her twice. But now that she was busy, she had less time to spend with him. She couldn't even use their joint dog walks as an excuse to hang out. She had a live stream that afternoon. She streamed from her dorm room. She tried other locations, but the dorm just worked better. Maybe it felt more authentic. She'd cleared it with her roommates. Since she was mostly taste-testing snacks and trying out little gadgets for girls, and companies sent her tons of free samples, she was always sharing with them. Her dorm wasn't exactly a study-focused environment anyway. Everyone was usually just hanging out, and some of her roommates were even enthusiastic to act as her co-hosts. Some people were awkward on camera, while others could talk a blue streak to an empty audience. But Paige seemed to be a natural. There was something about her innocent face and the way she spoke that made people trust her. There was no act. It was all real. Happily wearing the bone necklace Leo had given her, she went back to her room to go live. Maybe because she wasn't desperate for the money, she never came across as pushy. She'd start her streams slowly, chatting about random things, answering questions, sipping water, sometimes touching up her makeup. This led to a flood of people asking for links to her clothes and jewelry. She wasn't interested in becoming a fashion influencer. She didn't have the energy for it. This was just something she did for fun. She chose snacks she actually ate from big, reliable brands and was careful about the quality of the makeup she featured. They say the rich get richer, and maybe this was why. People don't trust someone who's obviously trying to make a buck. They assume you're just trying to scam them. But they'll believe a rich person, thinking they're already loaded. Why would they lie to me over a few dollars? In reality, a few dollars from one person becomes millions from a million people. What starts as a persona becomes reality. Paige didn't have to fake it. She naturally exuded the air of a well-off, pampered girl. Today, in her racing jacket, she was flooded with comments calling her pretty and asking where she got it. I bought it at a car race, Paige answered. It wasn't a lie. Her sister loved racing and had gotten them tickets to a VIP box, starting price $35,000. The buffet was amazing. You could spot celebrities, and the view was perfect. Her sister was there to network, but Paige was just there for the food and to maybe get an autograph for her roommates. That was the difference. Most of the girls watching had never been to a car race, and if they had, it was in the cheap seats. A VIP ticket was an extravagance. But when Paige talked about it, there was no sense of showing off. She just answered questions honestly. That was her natural rich girl persona. Then someone noticed her bone necklace. It looked really good on her. Chokers like that, short and sitting right at the base of the throat, had a certain forbidden allure, perfect for a young woman with a slender neck. On someone older, it might just draw attention to wrinkles or a thick neck. But on Paige, it gave off a dark, sexy vibe. A little wildcat. Amazingly, most of Paige's followers were women. Maybe it was because she had a bombshell figure but was completely oblivious to her own sex appeal. She was direct, not a mean girl, never passive-aggressive or fake. She was the kind of girl whose stunning body you noticed but didn't immediately sexualize. A ton of people asked for the link to the necklace. A friend gave it to me, she said. Then someone commented that it was sold in pet stores and asked if she had a pet. Another girl might have gotten angry, but Paige's mind went somewhere else entirely. He gave me this. Does that mean he thinks of me as his pet? She blushed furiously, then broke into a huge, happy grin and continued her stream, totally unbothered. A bunch of viewers immediately started taking screenshots to search for the necklace online, ready to buy their own, imagining the little bone would bounce just as charmingly on their chests. Leo dropped Moose off, said his goodbyes, and headed to the art studio. He tidied up a bit, then called Sean to come over and film a video for him. It's amazing how many things you have to do in a day. If you just think about them, it's overwhelming. But if you write them down in a notebook or a memo app and check them off one by one, it gives you a sense of accomplishment, boosts efficiency, and fights procrastination. If you don't write them down, the sheer number of tasks makes you want to do none of them, creating a vicious cycle. Sean had been editing all day and was ready for a break. As evening approached, Sean Riley walked toward the studio, his camera bag slung over his shoulder, his feet stepping on his own long shadow. Leo stood before a canvas, ready to sketch out a base layer. Alex sat in the corner of a conference room, taking notes on page 37 of his massive book. And Jordan's fingers danced across his keyboard, waging war against an opponent in a flurry of clicks. No outsiders ever came into the art studio, so it was a relaxing space. It had an artsy, comfortable, and casual vibe. Dr. Croft had redecorated when she arrived. This was a woman who insisted on changing the paintings in her hospital room. So, of course, she would fix up the place where art was actually made. Some people just have a natural design sense. You could arrange the same objects and create a mess, but in her hands, everything suddenly looked sophisticated. Leo had called Dr. Croft after returning to campus. She answered and immediately launched into a litany of complaints. Apparently, the VIP treatment in the international wing was already over the top. Patients there had nursing assistants escort them to the first floor for tests, usually getting priority over the outpatient crowd. But after her room was changed, nurses started wheeling the equipment directly to her, except for huge machines like the MRI scanner. Doctors checked on her 3 times a day. The constant attention made her uneasy. "Are you sure I'm not terminally ill?" she'd ask them. They had to repeatedly reassure her that she wasn't dying before she finally calmed down. She never thought she'd be benefiting from one of her students' connections. What kind of background did this kid have that she didn't know about? Leo listened to her vent for a while, making a mental note to thank Adam right again. Sometimes that's how deep connections were forged, through a simple back and forth of favors. Sean arrived, and Leo asked him to record a video of him doing Dr. Shun's mindful restoration technique. He wasn't entirely confident it would work for everyone, since results varied from person to person, but today he had the spiritual mentor buff on top of his existing master instructor buff. He felt like he could be a full-blown success coach. She didn't suddenly stop loving you. You just suddenly found out. She's hot and cold with you, just like a water heater. It's because someone else is using it at the same time. Understand? Applause. Leo sketched a base layer on his canvas to get into the right headspace. He'd just been running around with Moose, so he was dressed casually and in a relaxed state. The evening sun was still out, but it would be gone in half an hour. Filming with and without sunlight were 2 completely different experiences. Even if the sun wasn't warm, the moment it set, a coldness seemed to swallow everything. He needed to get this done while the light was still there. He was comfortable in front of Sean. He considered filming in the dorm, but the soundproofing was terrible. You could hear people yelling outside or walking down the hall. It was fine for living, but terrible for recording. He had no experience teaching, so he decided to approach it like his other TikToks, with Sean filming him doing the entire routine. He would speak the visualization prompts out loud, clearly for the camera. Instead of telling people what to imagine, he would demonstrate his own process. Sean found the perfect angle, with the trees and the setting sun as a backdrop. Leo was slightly backlit, his features soft but not perfectly clear, creating a gentle, beautiful light. Sean's filming style had really come into its own. He had a knack for capturing subjects in a soft, natural way, making them feel integrated with their surroundings. The camera slowly pushed in as sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling Leo in light. He sat comfortably, back straight but legs uncrossed. He smiled at Sean, then began. His voice was calm and measured. He first introduced the mindful restoration technique, explaining that it was an exercise created by the traditional physician Dr. Stephen Shun after he suffered from lower body paralysis. The most important thing is to be calm and patient, he said. When you visualize, imagine something familiar to you. Close your eyes and look inward. You can imagine flowing water, the wind, the roots of a banyan tree, sunlight, plants. Anything works. Right now, I am imagining a single drop of water falling on the crown of my head, spreading out and slowly flowing downwards. Leo's instructions were clear and direct. He avoided technical jargon like acupressure points. His godfather's books had whole chapters on them. But for a layperson, that was useless information. This video was for beginners, for powerful people who had no time for complexities. The goal was for anyone, even someone illiterate, to understand. As he described the process, he performed the movements, looking inward. Through Sean's lens, the scene felt alive. The young man had a pleasant voice and a handsome face, and his earnest, step-by-step guidance made it easy to follow along. There was a profound quality to it, a sense that Leo himself was in a state of selfless focus. Most people, he knew, lost concentration around the middle of their body. A person's attention span is finite. That's why methods like the Pomodoro technique only last for 25 minutes. Pushing through by force doesn't work. Leo's own method was a kind of self-suggestion. Now continue. You can begin. The drop of water continued its journey. Leo coordinated it with deep breathing, a method his godfather had developed by listening to the chirping of insects in the quiet northwest, mimicking the rhythm of the tides. Inhale for 6 seconds, hold for 2, exhale for 8. When he finished the entire set, Leo opened his eyes. He felt as if he had scanned his entire body from head to toe. He was even a little warm. The exercise was perfect for anyone with muscle knots or blockages, the kind of pain that only gets worse when someone else tries to massage it. But by visualizing it yourself, you could release the tension instantly. He felt a light sheen of sweat on his skin. He opened his eyes and smiled easily. The video ended. Sean, focused on the angles and light, hadn't followed along. But he'd seen a real shift in Leo. At the beginning, he was casual, but at a certain point, his whole aura seemed to elevate, drawing you in. When the recording was over, Sean let out a breath. It was basically perfect, no editing needed. Leo asked him for a raw version and one with a subtle white noise track of ocean tides. That was easy enough for Sean to do right there in the studio. After a short break, Leo went back to his painting, starting with a commission from Dr. Croft to earn some spending money and warm up his skills before tackling the portrait of General Ingram. With the video done, another task was checked off his list. He and Sean headed back to the dorm. Sean sent him both versions of the video. Leo chose the raw one. The sound of his breathing, with its subtle changes, felt more authentic. The white noise, while masking ambient sounds, also masked that. He sent the video to his godfather, who watched it and said it was good, telling him to forward it to old Mr. Preston's people. Dr. Shun wanted his godson to build these relationships himself, to make them his own social circle. Leo understood and was grateful. A younger version of himself might have seen it as just another task, but with a bit more wisdom, he recognized it for what it was. His godfather was handing him a ladder. Dr. Shun was also touched. The video's introduction credited him properly as the creator, not as my godfather, but professionally as a physician. Leo sent the video to Adam Wright, also passing along Dr. Croft's thanks for the excellent care at the hospital. Adam received it and, knowing its importance, immediately forwarded it to his boss. If the boss approved and shared it within his circle, this young man would become famous in a very exclusive, very powerful way. Even though Leo wasn't in the capital, his influence there was just getting started. Leo told Sean not to post the exercise video on TikTok. Sean had plenty of other content in reserve. The video of Leo's induction into the Bridgewater Fellowship, however, got a huge number of likes and comments. Their generation was often criticized for being wasteful, unable to handle hardship, lazy, and emotionally detached. Yet, they also seemed to be more patriotic than any generation before them. Leo had a classmate who was so adamant about it that he refused to buy Apple products and wouldn't let his family or girlfriend buy them either. When his girlfriend insisted, he compromised by getting a new girlfriend. The video's comment section blew up. The underscore Stella. Suddenly I feel motivated to go conquer the world. What's happening? Burnout 20 years. Sigh. I hope everyone who takes an oath like that never forgets their promise. American Soul. USA. USA. Angry Aussie Pine. Too late today is still early. Too early tomorrow is already late. Forest underscore fan. My heart is pounding. My blood is boiling. Lotus. This is the hope of our nation. the continuation of a new power. Tired, underscore just ended all. This is what I imagine a college student should be. Youthful spirit, goals, ideals, a bright future. I feel like I'm not even a real college student. Restless Margaret. To be young, gifted, and driven. Ganja1 underscore G. Keep it up. We're with you. Meanwhile, Adam Wright was giving his report. He chose his moment carefully, after his boss's dinner, during his rest period. It wasn't a major work update, so the timing was appropriate. He played the video of Leo's exercise routine, then followed it with the induction video and its comments. At that high a level, one's information intake is heavily filtered. Aids act like a human algorithm, constantly feeding you news and updates tailored to your interests, which can create an information bubble. It takes a strong will to break out of it. Tonight, Adam was showing old Mr. Preston something different. It wasn't critical intelligence, but Mr. Preston watched it several times. This is the important information, he said with a sigh. Older people tend to look upon the young with a certain fondness, their actions triggering memories of their own past. Of course, there were cynical comments too. Valley underscore vagrant. It's a nice dream, but then you graduate, get crushed by debt, and have to choose between selling your soul to climb the ladder or becoming a numb workhorse. Only a tiny few get to follow their dreams. Endless praise would have felt fake. The mix of admiration, emotion, criticism, and indifference was what made it real. This was the genuine reaction of ordinary people. Mr. Preston was touched. Overall, the sentiment was positive. The spirit of the youth was the future of the nation. As long as they had that fire, the country would be strong. He was pleased. Adam knew he'd made the right call. He also mentioned arranging for Leo's professor's hospital stay. It was a small thing, but reporting it showed his proactive work ethic and also did a favor for Leo. The kid hadn't asked for anything unreasonable. Helping a teacher was a noble act. General Ingram, on the other hand, was in too much pain to wait for morning. His condition was far more severe than Mr. Preston's age-related ailments. He had been strong his whole life, ignoring minor pains, but now the illness that had taken root was a serious one. He had already told his family that when the time came, he wanted no tubes, no ICU. But he was already in constant pain, relying on medication that was steadily losing its effectiveness. That evening, his son, Secretary Ingram, came to sit with him. Liam had already shown his grandfather the video of Moose, telling him, "Leo says hi to Ranger." It had made the old general chuckle. One interesting kid. Doesn't say hi to us, says hi to the dog. When Secretary Ingram projected Leo's guide onto the wall, the general was ready to try. He had his son dim the lights to a comfortable level. The great thing about the exercise was that it could be done lying down, which was how Dr. Shun had developed it during his paralysis. The general closed his eyes and listened to the young man's voice. It was like he was right there in the room. He followed the instructions, the calm, steady, yet kind voice guiding him through the breathing and visualization. It was much smoother than trying on his own. The general imagined corn silk. At first, he focused on the exercise, but his mind drifted to a cornfield from his youth. The stalks towered over him, and he had to stand on his toes to reach the silky threads. The sun was scorching, cicadas buzzed, and he was so thirsty he'd husked a raw ear of corn and eaten it right there, the sweet juice soothing his throat. Secretary Ingram didn't know if his father had finished the routine, but after a while, he heard the soft, steady sound of snoring. His father was asleep. Returning to the dorm was like a character in League of Legends teleporting back to base to heal. Once he was at full health, Leo was ready to head out again. People in relationships tend to pay more attention to their appearance. Back in his dorm, he freshened up. If he were single, he might wear the same shirt for a week in the winter, just changing his underwear. Smirking emoji tonight, though, he specifically wanted to wear a shirt that required cufflinks. It felt a little silly wearing a dress shirt in the winter, but Stella had given them to him, and he wanted her to see him wear them. He'd never worn anything so formal or high-end. The clothes Stella had picked out for him included some more formal pieces, otherwise he wouldn't have known what to do. A $150 shirt with $50,000 cufflinks just wouldn't work. He asked Jordan and Alex for help, and was met with a barrage of insults. "Get out. I can't look at this disgusting display of affection. Couple should be banned." Alex, in particular, was salty. He used to think he could get by on his looks, maybe land a sugar mama. Girls were always buying him food and snacks. He could at least get a free meal out of it, right? But what Leo was doing wasn't just getting a free meal. This was securing his retirement. What kind of girlfriend casually gives a gift of jade cufflinks worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Jordan was speechless. He didn't want to work hard anymore either. Stella had impeccable taste, and more importantly, the money to back it up. Leo didn't mention that it was Stella's mother who had picked them out. That probably would have earned him more than just insults. Despite his complaints, Alex helped him fasten the cufflinks. But then Leo pulled a light-colored sweater on over the shirt, followed by a winter coat, and the cufflinks were hidden again. It made sense why Rolexes were bestsellers in warmer climates. Up north, your wrists are covered for half the year. The Patek Philippe he wore was subtle anyway. Only those in the know would recognize it. With the cufflinks carefully in place, Leo set off. According to their agreement to split things, it was his turn to treat. He was taking her for a casual dinner. She was treating him to a fancy one later. The place she chose was off campus, and a private car was sent to pick him up. They arrived at a seafood hot pot restaurant downtown. It was a huge, lively place, packed with people, but not chaotic. There was an incredible variety of live seafood, clams, shrimp, fish, all displayed in individual stainless steel bowls. It was set up like one of those self-serve, spicy soup places. You just grabbed whatever you wanted. One bowl might have 2 giant clams, another 3 large shrimp. You picked your broth base and mixed your own dipping sauce. The place had a wonderful, bustling energy that screamed the food had to be good. Leo and Stella grabbed a ton of stuff. Clams, squid, beef, tripe, sea cucumber, and pork intestines. Stella grabbed just as much, along with some vegetables. The small bowls piled up, covering their table. Since Sean wasn't there, Leo asked Stella to help him film some clips for his channel. But mostly they just ate. Neither of them was driving, so they ordered a couple of beers. Seafood and beer, the gout special. The ingredients were incredibly fresh, and with his enhanced palate buff, Leo thought everything was delicious. He ate until a light sweat broke out on his brow. He'd taken off his coat, and when he reached across the table to put a piece of squid in Stella's bowl, she noticed the cufflinks. A smile spread across her face. Leo smiled back. He loved this about her. She came from immense wealth, but was never pretentious. She was as comfortable in a high-end restaurant as she was at a roadside stall, and she always picked the best places to eat. Being with her felt effortless, free of any negative pressure. After dinner, instead of getting right back in the car, they walked for a bit. It was cold, but the downtown streets were clean and quiet on this side road, with beautiful streetlights. After a while, they ducked into a small, elegant bar to warm up. The music was perfect, a soothing but lively jazz. The lighting was dim, casting a warm, sparkling glow through the thick, patterned glass of the windows. They sat at a table by the window, watching the occasional car pass by. It was a beautiful city. They didn't sit across from each other, but squeezed together on the sofa, their bodies pressed close. He felt drunk before he even touched his wine. He sent a quick text to Alex. Not coming back tonight. Cover for me if there's a dorm check. After a few drinks, they took a car not back to campus, but to his apartment at Clearwater Cove. He hadn't been back in a while, and neither had Stella. The first thing he saw upon entering was the gigantic portrait of himself. It was still mortifying, but then Stella was in his arms, her body warm against his, and his eyes were on the painting over her shoulder. The feeling was intoxicating. He was a little rough, urgent, but the man in the painting was gentle and handsome. Embracing the real him while admiring the painted him was a dizzying experience. This had to count as drunk driving. In the middle of the night, after a shower, they were both in pajamas. It was their little nest. The apartment was in Leo's name, but he'd had little to do with it. Stella had arranged everything. An immature couple might have insisted on picking out every single thing together, arguing over every choice, and eventually breaking up. But Stella had a lot of her father, Richard Vance, in her. Richard Vance had started as a street hustler, a smooth-faced rogue with a heart of stone. But men like him often held a deep-seated belief in loyalty to their elders and to their families. At his level of success, women threw themselves at him, some as young as his own daughter, spouting nonsense from romance novels about loving him for who he was, not for his money. Bullshit. When he was 17 and built like a bull, no girl had ever said that. Did they love the fistful of pills he took every day or the thickness of his medical chart? His wife spent a lot of money and had a temper, but she was fundamentally simple and still beautiful. He could sleep soundly with her by his side. At home, he could toss his phone anywhere, curl up on the sofa, and pick at the calluses on his feet, a lifelong habit. Billionaires were human, after all. Because he had no mistresses, he had no other children, just his one daughter. He figured if he could make it from nothing, his daughter, who wanted for nothing, would be fine. As for what she became, he had no expectations. He employed plenty of geniuses from top universities. They were brilliant at their jobs, efficient and organized. But being good at your job and being a good person were two different things. He didn't interfere with how his wife raised their daughter, and he expected the same courtesy. He taught his daughter the lessons he believed were useful, even if they weren't conventional wisdom. He believed conventional wisdom was designed to keep people in line like good little worker bees. If you didn't want to be a workhorse, you had to learn the unconventional truths. Stella had inherited that pragmatism. She handled things that improved herself, but for everything else, she hired a professional. She was an amateur at interior design, and so was Leo. Two amateurs arguing over how to decorate a house was, in her mind, insane. She wouldn't waste her energy on it. So, while neither Leo nor Stella had put much effort into the apartment, it was perfectly comfortable. And being there together, with no one else to interfere, they could do whatever they loved to do. It was spontaneous. In the middle of the night, instead of sleeping, they decided to brew tea. Leo brought out the special Olympus Gold tea that old Mr. Preston had given him. He brewed a pot carefully, and they drank it together. The tea had a warm, lingering aroma, and it tasted sweet as it went down, soothing his throat and reviving his spirit. It was practically medicine, a gentle, nourishing tonic. It was almost like ginseng. His godfather, Dr. Shun, loved using ginseng in his practice. The Olympus Gold had a similar effect, but without the harshness. It was elegant and clean, perfect for two young people who had thoroughly exhausted themselves. After drinking it, the soreness in his back seemed to vanish. At this age, a boy and a girl don't need to search for topics of conversation. They talked about nothing, and then their eyes met over their teacups. The wearying, clinging feeling returned. The tea had replenished their energy. The next round was different, their bodies more familiar, more in sync. Stella felt the tea was comforting, and so was his body. Leo thought the tea was sweet, but Stella was sweeter, intoxicating, dizzying, thrilling. The tea sobered the mind, but the person made you drunk. Good thing he wasn't wearing his fitness watch. It would have been utterly confused by the data. Why is this person sleeping in short, sporadic bursts all night? And what's with all the steps and the elevated heart rate in the middle of the night? The next day, Leo woke to bright sunlight streaming into the beautifully wrecked bedroom. He was alone. He fumbled for his phone and saw a text from Shelly Shun. Mom and I are heading back. Dad was supposed to come, but a patient had a sudden heart attack, so he's staying. Just letting you know, a lot can happen in one night. Wars can start, accidents can happen, or you could just sleep until morning. Everyone's experience is different. Dr. Shun had been planning to fly back to the Northwest with his wife and daughter that morning. They had an early flight, which would give them time to rest before he had to be at the hospital in the afternoon. His roots were there. The capital was dazzling, and he could afford anything it had to offer, but he just didn't feel at home. He preferred to go back, to walk the halls of his hospital and feel his spirits lift. A walk along the Yellow River every day was all he needed. But that morning, he never made it onto the plane. He was stopped at the airport. It was a shock. But Dr. Shun was a man with a strong heart and a clear conscience, so his first instinct wasn't to run. He never imagined his own big mouth would be the cause of this. The high-level official he had examined, the one with the back problems, he had told him that his condition put him at risk for a heart attack. And now it had actually happened. There was no time for explanations. He just told his daughter to let her brother know. With a real heart attack, there was nothing he could do in the immediate aftermath. He wasn't a miracle worker from a TV show who could save someone with a single acupuncture needle. A heart attack is an emergency. The golden window for saving a life is within the first 2 hours. The official had collapsed before dawn. He'd gone to bed late and felt a slight twinge in his chest, a bit of a palpitation, but had chalked it up to the strong tea he'd drunk. He thought it was just his back acting up from sitting too long. He'd even joked with his wife about the traditional doctor who saw a connection between his back pain and a potential heart attack. He'd felt his heart was perfectly healthy. But in the middle of the night, his wife had woken up and realized something was terribly wrong. Dr. Shun was held back, though he couldn't do much in the initial chaos. But he was well connected in the capital from his younger days, and even the president's personal physician, who had flown in that morning, greeted him warmly. It helped that Dr. Shun wasn't just a doctor anymore. With his pharmaceutical company, he was on more equal footing with his old, more successful colleagues. Leo called Shelly, but it went straight to voicemail. She must have been on the plane. He texted back, "Got it. I'll check in with Godfather, see if he needs anything." He then messaged Dr. Shun, who didn't reply. He was probably swamped. Leo got out of bed. He'd missed his morning run. Stella was already up, stretching, one long leg propped up somewhere near her head as she read a book. The sunlight illuminated her like a pink rose. Leo felt a little tired, not fully rested. How did Stella manage to look so radiant, so energetic, so impossibly flexible? After brushing his teeth, he walked over and planted a firm kiss on her cheek, disrupting her difficult pose. She lowered her leg. "Stop it. We have to go back to campus soon. Leo behaved, mostly because he didn't have the energy not to. He needed food. His legs felt weak. He was pretty sure he was healthy, with decent stamina, but Stella's vitality was on another level. Was he inadequate? He was too embarrassed to ask. After a late breakfast, instead of heading straight back, he wanted to go to the boxing gym. He was suddenly worried about his physical fitness. Or was Stella just superhuman? They went to the Crucible and trained for an hour. Leo was still a beginner, so his workout wasn't as intense, and he finished first. The coach praised him, saying his progress was remarkable. Even after a long break, his agility and speed had noticeably improved, as had his strength. "You're a natural," the coach said. "You should consider competing." Leo just laughed it off. His athletic ability was mediocre at best. His fitness was a gift from the system. He was the son of factory workers, and his body had always been a bit weak. He had the kind of pale, clean-cut look that made him the one that got away from many girls in their youth. But he knew he wasn't a fighter. He didn't have the killer instinct. He finished his training and went to watch Stella. She was in a higher class, with a dedicated sparring partner. It was like a real match. She had a red headband tied around her forehead to keep stray hairs out of her eyes. To Leo, she looked incredible. Her boxing outfit was black, but her gloves were a bright, beautiful rainbow pattern. He took several pictures. A man standing next to him asked, "Is that your girl up there?" "Yeah," Leo said proudly. "That's my girlfriend." The match began. Stella smiled and gave Leo a little wave with her gloved hand. He grinned back like an idiot. Then he watched as she expertly controlled the distance, her footwork nimble. Her opponent couldn't get close. She tested with a jab, then followed with a powerful right cross and an uppercut, a lethal combination. After waving at him, her expression had turned deadly serious, and she proceeded to beat the pulp out of the other fighter. She was a gifted, dedicated athlete who had been training for years. Leo watched, mesmerized, as Stella, who was smaller and lighter, systematically dismantled her opponent. She trapped him against the ropes, using not just physical force but psychological pressure before landing a final, decisive blow. KO. It was a perfect fusion of power, technique, and intelligence. The man beside him sucked in a sharp breath, clapped Leo on the shoulder, and gave him a thumbs up. "You're a brave man, kid." That morning, with his personal physician by his side, old Mr. Preston watched the video and completed the mindful restoration technique. As he'd hoped, doing it first thing, when his mind was clearest, worked. Listening to the young doctor's voice, he made it through the entire routine without a single interruption. When he was done, the stiffness from a night's sleep had eased. He was in a good mood. He hadn't shared the video with his little group chat yet. You couldn't force these things on people, especially when it came to health. If they wanted it, they'd ask. Just as his mood was improving, his assistant, Adam, informed him about Secretary Wu's heart attack. They had waited until Mr. Preston was calm and stable before breaking the news. Even so, it was a shock. He remembered Dr. Shun's diagnosis and how blunt it had sounded at the time. Predicting a heart attack felt far too alarmist. But it had come true. Dr. Shun was about to board a plane, but was stopped at the airport and taken to the hospital, Adam reported. A heart attack was a serious business. Even if you survived, you were out of commission for a long time. Mr. Preston had seen enough colleagues fall. The recovery was long and arduous. For a man like Secretary Wu, returning to his high-pressure job would be a monumental challenge, if not impossible. The news left Mr. Preston feeling pensive and deeply appreciative of his own health. To live, to be healthy, that was the foundation of everything. He thought for a moment, then decided to forward the exercise video to his 7-person group chat. After all, he wanted his old friends to live a little longer. Otherwise, the world would be a very lonely place. After their boxing session, Leo and Stella had lunch at the club. Then, Leo headed back to campus while Stella went home. On the way, he remembered his forgotten promise to get a gift for Cody, Ms. Miller's son. He had to remember this time. The car Stella had arranged was comfortable, and Leo slept for most of the ride. The previous night's exercise had been strenuous. He needed to catch up on sleep. Stella went home to build a custom crystal display case for the Tang Dynasty figurine Leo had given her. She felt it was too precious to leave out in the open. When she arrived, she took a nap, waking up in the early evening. Her mother, Victoria, was surprised to see her. "You're home." Stella had planned to grab her materials and head back to campus. Being alone with her mother was often difficult. Their conversations inevitably turned into arguments. But her father's presence was a rare treat. Richard Vance arrived home early, looking road-weary. He much preferred home cooking to the fancy fare he ate on the road. The atmosphere between his wife and daughter was, as usual, tense. Victoria had bought one of Stella's paintings, but couldn't resist a critical comment. "You can't be painting nudes." Stella was speechless. How could her mother even think she would do that? But Victoria was adamant that girls needed to protect their reputations, especially from artists. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Richard returned, first placating his wife, then going to his daughter. The house was so large they could occupy opposite corners of the living room. He found Stella working on a craft, gluing something together. He remembered she used to love crafts as a child. He'd spent many hours helping her with them. It was a rare moment of connection he missed dearly. Now, seeing her working on something again, he eagerly offered his help. He was good at this stuff. Stella had found a blue crystal base and some crystal panes and was building a small house. They worked together, and Richard felt a surge of pride. It had been years since they had done something like this. "Dad still got the skills, right?" he boasted, seeking praise. "See how steady it is? The little door even opens and closes. You can put things inside." Stella gave him a thumbs up. "Thanks, Dad. So what's it for?" he asked casually. Very carefully, Stella took out the Tang Dynasty figurine and placed it inside the crystal house. "It's a Tang Dynasty figurine a friend gave me. It fit perfectly." Stella leaned in close, admiring it, her face glowing with happiness. Richard Vance stared at it. For some reason, he felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest. He slept all the way back to campus. The moment he stepped off the shuttle, he felt revitalized, the tightness in his chest gone. The university, nestled between a mountain and a lake, was an oasis of fresh, clean air. Leo headed straight for a classroom to study. He felt like he'd been slacking on his primary responsibilities lately. If he remembered correctly, a student's job was to study, not to be a trophy husband, so that's what he needed to do. He also really needed a locker or some kind of personal space on campus. Lugging a backpack everywhere was a dead giveaway. You were either a student or a programmer, and with a hairline as robust as his, he could only be a student. It wasn't a big deal on campus, of course, where everyone was a student. When he got to the classroom, he noticed Winnie Lou wasn't there, but Colin Edwards was still grinding away. On his way over, Leo had texted Ms. Miller, "Hey, would it be okay if I stopped by after school to give Cody that toy?" She'd replied almost instantly, "I'm actually off this afternoon. I was just about to go grocery shopping. Why don't you and your roommates come over for dinner? The more the merrier." Leo thought about it and agreed. He couldn't exactly turn down an invitation that included his friends. He dropped a message in the dorm group chat. "Ms. Miller's inviting us over for dinner tonight. Alex, Roger. Jordan, Roger. Sean, I'm out of campus footage. Maybe we can head over early and I can film us helping out?" Leo, "Okay, I'm in a classroom studying." He added this to create the illusion he'd been diligently hitting the books since he got back. "Alex, Jordan, Sean, Leo, just let me know when you guys are ready." Inside the classroom, Colin Edwards had been surprised not to see the master arrive for his morning study session. He'd half wondered if Leo was off performing some other-world-shaking feat. To see him return in the afternoon, just as focused as ever, was a jolt of motivation. If a guy 100 times more capable than me is this dedicated, Colin thought, what excuse do I have? He had been studying all day and was about to head out for a game of basketball. But instead, he readjusted himself in his seat, his resolve hardening. Study until you drop. Leo was oblivious to the fact that his arrival had inexplicably thickened the scholarly atmosphere in the room. He mused that for most people, knowledge followed a parabolic curve. It peaked in senior year of high school after a long climb from kindergarten, then plummeted right after graduation. Not all the way back to kindergarten, but it would rapidly recede to a freshman or sophomore level of high school, then begin a slow, gentle decline. There might be small fluctuations, but the general trend was downward. Then, right before entering the workforce, the curve would spike again, because a real job forced you to learn new things, even if they were specialized. That was the path for most people. The true academic stars, however, were on a constantly ascending trajectory, the only difference being the steepness of the incline. Leo figured his own curve had taken a nosedive after high school, flattened out, and was now finally beginning to climb again. He decided to review operations research, a course he'd taken in his freshman or sophomore year that suddenly seemed incredibly useful. If you mastered operations research and time management, could you successfully date several people at once? Not that, of course. It was more that the subject felt like a meta-skill, a tool for learning itself. It combined mathematics, statistics, computer science, and economics. It had seemed impossibly complex back then. But looking at it now, perhaps because his perspective had broadened or his IQ had ticked up a few points, the core logic seemed simple. Use math to solve complex real-world problems. So many issues were a tangled mess, but applying a mathematical framework could often cut right through the noise. He suspected that was one of Professor Reed's secrets to a long life. From this new angle, math was an incredibly powerful tool, worth another look. He dove back into his old textbook, activating the time dilation buff. It felt like hours passed, but it was nothing like the first time he'd sat through these lectures, feeling like he was deciphering an alien language. Something clicked. He finally got it. No wonder the top students loved learning. It was a rush. The dopamine hit from mastering a concept was intensely satisfying. After his deep dive into operations research, he went downstairs to refill his water bottle, jogged out to grab a yogurt, and chugged it down to offset the mental strain. He returned and tossed a yogurt to Colin, then opened the medical notes from his godfather, Dr. Shun. The short break and change of subject left him feeling refreshed and ready for another round. As evening approached, the classroom grew chilly. The cold kept his mind sharp, but after sitting for so long, his feet were like blocks of ice. Still, with the enhanced memory buff active, he pushed on, aiming to absorb as much as he could on the first pass. Understanding could come later. He reactivated the time dilation buff and kept going, feeling a surprising surge of energy. It was almost like that theory from fantasy novels. Exhaust your energy completely, and when it recovers, your limits will have expanded. He studied intently, jotting down every question that arose. Time slipped by, and the sun dipped below the treetops. His page of questions grew long. Finally, Alex called. "We're downstairs. Ready to go." "Yep, be right there." Leo snapped photos of his notes and sent them to his godfather. The surgery on the official had been a success, though it had been a close call. The man's wife had personally come to thank Dr. Shun. Caught among a group of the nation's top physicians, Dr. Shun hadn't left immediately. It was a rare opportunity to exchange ideas with his peers. Then he received the message from his godson. Seeing the densely packed pages of questions, Dr. Shun was deeply moved. The student he had taken on was not only gifted, but also incredibly hardworking. To have this many questions after just 2 days meant he must have been pulling all-nighters. Dr. Shun quickly replied, "Got them. I'll organize the answers for you when I get back. Make sure you get some rest. Don't stay up too late. You'll burn yourself out." Leo stared at the message. My godfather is some kind of wizard, he thought. How does he do that? We're hundreds of miles apart, no video call, and he could tell I'm exhausted just from looking at my notes? When Leo got downstairs, he saw Alex holding a wriggling black plastic bag. "Got a fish from a guy who fishes the reservoir. $40. Venmo me, 10 each," Alex said efficiently. Leo and the others sent the money without a second thought. Even with the closest friends, you kept the books clean. You might treat someone to a $200 dinner, but for day-to-day stuff, everyone paid their share. Gifts were gifts, but purchases were purchases. Blurring those lines led to resentment. $10 wasn't much, but finding a local guy selling fresh-caught fish from the reservoir, that took effort. This wasn't exactly Alex's home turf. Judging by the violent thrashing in the bag, it was a big one. Alex was a social animal, a force of nature. The truth was, he'd been craving Leo's cooking, and the mere thought of that fish made his mouth water. As they passed the faculty housing security booth, they saw Mr. Roberts bundled up inside, a space heater glowing at his feet, completely engrossed in an episode of The Americans. He loved that show. This had to be his 3rd or 4th time rewatching it. He glanced up, saw the familiar faces, and gave them a lazy wave to go on in. He was at a critical scene. Elizabeth was at the airport, Philip was about to board a plane, and the tension was palpable. He didn't have time for pleasantries. Ms. Miller's apartment was warm and cozy, the heat humming softly. She was dressed simply in a comfortable pair of plaid lounge pants and a long-sleeved white t-shirt, her hair pulled up into a messy top knot. It was a rare hairstyle for her. She usually wore it down or in a low ponytail. This style framed her face completely. Her skin was flawless, fair and smooth. With her hair pulled back, she looked strikingly different. Her eyes weren't huge, but they were bright and almond-shaped with a slight, playful upturn at the corners. She had a delicate nose and soft, full lips. None of her features were dramatic on their own, but together they created a gentle, warm beauty. They say your face reflects your soul, and maybe there's some truth to it. A person's physical and mental state etched itself onto their features over time. "You're here so early. I just finished prepping the ingredients," she said. In reality, she just finished a face mask, which was why her hair was up. The post-mask glow was real. Her skin looked plump and radiant. Knowing the students were coming, she'd chosen a casual, comfortable outfit. After a round of greetings, Sean was already filming. "We brought a fish to add to the meal, Ms. Miller," Leo said with a smile. "Oh, wonderful. I'll clean it." No, we've got it," Leo insisted. She didn't argue, guessing they were probably filming for their TikTok. She brought out a bowl of fruit and some snack for Alex and Jordan, telling them to relax and have some tea while they chatted about their trip to D.C. In the kitchen, Leo opened the black bag. It was a massive sea bass, at least 5 or 6 pounds, fresh from the reservoir and still full of fight. It thrashed in the sink, sending water flying. Sean stood to the side, adjusting the lighting on his camera. The kitchen had been converted from a balcony, so it was surprisingly spacious. Ms. Miller had it perfectly organized. A checkered cloth covered the top of the fridge, dishes were neatly stacked in racks, and spices were stored in identical labeled glass jars. The range hood and stovetop were spotless. Sean thought it looked like the set for a commercial. You could have seamlessly inserted an ad for Mr. Clean, and no one would have blinked. The space was filled with charming details, little flower-shaped coasters, an Ultraman-themed cup, and a bright yellow thermos. It was the kitchen of someone who loved life. The magnets on the fridge were even arranged to form the shape of a dog. The whole scene had a cozy, indie movie vibe. It was warm in the apartment, so Leo took off his coat and sweater, leaving him in a white button-down shirt. The same one, of course. It was chosen specifically to go with his jade cufflinks. He had to admit, there was something ridiculously extra about cleaning a fish in a crisp white shirt and slacks. A little bit of a try-hard, forbidden romance novel feel. The juxtaposition of the immaculate, cozy kitchen with his formal attire was a perfect bit of reverse charm. He rolled up his sleeves, hiding the cufflinks but revealing the Patek Philippe Nautilus on his wrist. It was always a trade-off. Style was so inconvenient. He grabbed a rolling pin and, with one swift thwack, knocked the writhing fish unconscious. It was a beautiful sea bass, a good 5-pounder. Looking at it, Leo remembered the notes from his godfather. Time to put his studies into practice. Sea bass was known for its tender meat and nutritional value. The gills, he recalled, were said to soothe coughs. The meat was good for the spleen and stomach, and it was especially recommended for post-operative recovery to promote healing. It was the kind of folk wisdom passed down through generations. Eat fish, it's good for you. But now he understood the specific reasons why. Leo set about preparing the 6-pound dose of medicine. He dispatched it, scaled it, cleaned it, and cut it into steaks for steaming. He didn't have a platter or a pot big enough to cook it whole. His movements were fluid and practiced, like he'd been working a fish counter for the last 8 years. With his permanent skill, advanced culinary proficiency level 4, steamed fish, he knew that no matter the fish, as long as he steamed it, the result would be perfect. He was also preparing a tonic, something to nourish and strengthen the body. It was perfect for Cody, who was still recovering from his major surgery and was exempt from gym class. As he worked, Leo explained the medicinal properties of the sea bass, reviewing the homework from his godfather out loud. Sean found the angle fascinating. The foodie influencer space was overcrowded, but framing a cooking segment as the preparation of traditional medicine, that was fresh. After filming the segment, Sean put the camera away and helped with the rest of the meal prep. Just then, Cody got home from school. He lit up when he saw his favorite big brothers. Leo had brought him a gift. During one of their late-night gaming sessions, Cody had mentioned that his favorite character was Megatron, the Decepticon leader from Transformers. An unusual choice for a kid, but undeniably cool. Leo wasn't sure if it was officially licensed, but the craftsmanship was top tier. He'd picked out a G1 style DX9 Megatron, a high-end collectible with a full alloy frame and articulated eyes. It had cost him nearly $600. As expected, Cody went berserk. He snatched the figure and ran around the living room, holding it high. "Decepticons, attack!" he shrieked. "Everything I see is fuel for my hunger, and my hunger is power." Ms. Miller saw the Transformers figure and knew instantly that it wasn't cheap. She didn't say anything in front of Cody, though. Don't correct a child in public. It was a principle she held dear. Criticizing a child in front of others, especially when they've already made a mistake, isn't about teaching them. It's about venting your own frustration. Some parents, with no ill intentions, would completely disregard their child's feelings, scolding, or even hitting them in front of their friends. It was a failure of emotional control, inflicting deep psychological wounds on a sensitive kid. There was a running joke online about how if you told an American therapist your unvarnished childhood story, they'd need therapy themselves afterward. Cody's father was a prime example. One day, he'd picked Cody up from school with his new girlfriend in tow. Cody saw her clinging to his father's arm. This was before the divorce, and he didn't want to say hello. Right there, in front of teachers and other students, his dad had smacked him on the back of the head. What's wrong with you? Show some respect. Say hi. Single-parent households came with their own awkward dynamics. Ms. Miller wanted Cody to have positive male role models, but she also worried about putting too much pressure on him. She'd invited Leo and his friends over with no ulterior motives. She just wanted her son to spend time with good guys, and she thought all of them were decent kids. Jordan was a bit of a goofball, but he was good-natured, emotionally intelligent, and self-aware, rare qualities for his age. Sean came from a more modest background, but he was incredibly diligent and humble. A kid like that was bound for success. Alex had that poised, diplomatic air of someone from a political family, but he was never arrogant or dismissive of others. As long as he stayed on the right path, he'd do well. As for Leo, she didn't try to analyze him too much. She just found herself smiling whenever she saw him. For dinner, Ms. Miller had prepared a feast: pot roast, beef stew with potatoes, mapo tofu, sautéed spinach, and a pork rib soup with carrots and parsnips. Added to that was Leo's magnificent steamed sea bass. She knew they were growing boys with big appetites, and Cody was no exception. Leo's fish was so fragrant it could make you bite your tongue. Even Ms. Miller, who was usually restrained, had more than her share. Her own cooking was excellent, too: simple, comforting food that tasted like home. She sometimes wondered what her ex-husband was thinking now. The woman he'd left her for, a younger co-worker, was pregnant and apparently a handful. She didn't cook, was obsessed with her appearance, and believed that a damsel in distress gets the best out of life. She was constantly demanding new purses, trips, and for him to peel her fruit. Ms. Miller had blocked her ex on social media, but Cody could still see his father's Facebook feed. The man didn't even remember his own son's birthday, yet he was posting daily updates about preparing for the new baby, buying gold jewelry, assembling a stroller, decorating the nursery. Thank goodness Cody was a boy and relatively thick-skinned, or he'd be deeply depressed. Sometimes, favoritism is the cruelest cut of all. Unseen by the world, the little boy was growing up on his own. During dinner, Cody placed his new Megatron on his desk, afraid it would get knocked over. He chattered away, telling the older boys all about school. There were some things he'd never tell his mom, but with them, the words just flowed. They all cleaned their plates, finishing every last bite. After the meal, everyone pitched in to clear the table, but Ms. Miller waved them off. She had a dishwasher. All she had to do was scrape the plates. With modern appliances like dishwashers and robot vacuums, life was much easier. She felt her life slowly getting back on track. She knew that her initial intense feelings for Leo had been born from the fear and emptiness of a sudden divorce, a desperate grasp for something stable. That's why so many people rush into another relationship, only to find it doesn't work either. It's a form of escape. The special feeling was still there, but she wasn't acting on it. It was more like having a crush on a wonderful person who was simply out of reach. In a way, it was a good thing. It kept her from rushing into another complicated marriage. She was learning to build a good life for herself and Cody on her own terms. After dinner, Cody got to use his 1 hour of gaming time to play a few rounds with Leo and the guys. Sean, who wasn't much of a gamer, filmed the scene. When it was time to leave, Ms. Miller told them, "Anytime you want a home-cooked meal, just come over. It's hard to cook for just 2 people, and food is always better with company." They all nodded obediently. She sent them off with a big bag of fruit and some snacks she'd made: braised chicken feet, boiled beef shank, and some sausages Cody's grandfather had sent over. She knew boys preferred savory snacks to sweets. They left with full stomachs and full hands. They hadn't rushed to give her a gift just because they'd won scholarships. In a long-term friendship, there was no need for grand gestures. Small, everyday kindnesses meant more. Of course, Leo was a different case. She had sent him money without a second thought and had publicly defended him on the university website when the school could have easily stayed silent. Only after the students had gone did she speak to her son. "Cody, that gift your brother Leo bought you is very expensive. You can't ask people for things like that, okay?" Cody mumbled, "I asked that a bunch of times, but he forgot. He never got it for me." Ms. Miller paused, then gently ruffled his short, prickly hair. Back in his dorm, Leo got a text from her. "Cody loves the gift. Thank you." It had been a full, satisfying day, capped off with Leo's steamed sea bass. Back in dorm room 402, everyone was in a pleasant food coma. Alex walked even more slowly than usual, with a slightly waddling gait. The appetite is a powerful desire, hard to control. Alex sighed dramatically. Food, sex, human nature. Jordan grinned. Food, sex, nature. That's 3 separate things, right? He and Alex both turned to look at Leo with knowing smirks. Leo just rolled his eyes. Hey, Alex, Leo said, changing the subject. Do you think you could get another one of those fish? Sure, Alex nodded. I got the fisherman's number. He's a good guy. If you need one, I'll have him set one aside for you. Leo was thinking he should pay Professor Hoffman a visit, and a fish like that would make a perfect gift. It was exceptionally fresh, likely wild-caught. The reservoir was the source of the local drinking water, so stocking it with farmed fish was forbidden, as was fishing. But it was a massive body of water, impossible to patrol completely. A dedicated angler could always find a quiet spot along the shore to cast a line. A while ago, Leo wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between wild and farmed fish, but now his palate was more refined. Farmed fish had a higher fat content, making the meat softer. They were fed pellets and got little exercise, resulting in looser muscle fibers, much like the corporate drones who ate takeout, sat all day, and got soft around the middle. Some farmed fish even had reddish flesh, not because of the species, but because of artificial colorants added to their feed. The sea bass they'd eaten tonight had firm, resilient meat with a clean, sweet flavor, completely free of any muddy taste that often plagued pond-raised fish. Of course, wild fish wasn't without its risks. Coastal ones could have heavy metal contamination, and there was always a chance of parasites. But farmed fish often had antibiotic residues. You could see the difference just by looking. A wild fish was streamlined and lean, its tail often a bit frayed from a life of struggle. A farmed fish was thick-backed and round-bellied, its scales pristine. It was a pampered baby that had never known hardship, but had consumed plenty of medicine. Leo had read up on market prices for fish. He knew that for a wild-caught sea bass of that size, the $40 Alex had paid was nowhere near the real price. He'd probably slipped the fisherman a couple packs of good cigarettes and paid him double on top of that. Alex had likely absorbed the cost himself out of consideration for Sean's budget. Alex is a genuinely good dude, Leo thought. That settled it. He had to invite him along. When Leo told Alex the fish was for Professor Hoffman, Alex puffed out his chest and said, "Leave it to me. I'll handle it." Leo dropped a picture of the cooked fish into his small group chat with Judge Cole and Professor Hoffman. Wild sea bass from the reservoir behind campus, he wrote. Want me to get one for tomorrow? Leo's relationship with the professor had evolved into something between a mentor and a friend. He hadn't texted him every day while in D.C., but they'd exchanged a few messages. It was the kind of comfortable connection where you didn't need a reason to reach out. Professor Hoffman was a man who appreciated the finer things. One look at the picture, and he knew it was the real deal. It was always satisfying to give a gift to someone who truly understood its value. He happily made arrangements, telling Leo to come over for dinner tomorrow afternoon. Later, as Alex headed out to handle some student government business, he mulled over the invitation. He knew Leo and Professor Hoffman were close, though he had no idea how that friendship had started. Maybe they're kindred spirits, he mused wryly. Both masters of the trophy husband system. Professor Hoffman's reputation on campus was that he was kept by his famous director wife, after all. Still, Alex had never pushed to be included. A friend's friend isn't always your friend. So when Leo had suddenly invited him, he was genuinely surprised. The food festival Leo had suggested was already in motion. Alex had delegated tasks to the student government, assigning one student to each vendor on the student strip. They were responsible for getting the business on board and managing them throughout the event. It created clear lines of accountability. He was also organizing teams for venue setup, promotion, and student outreach. On the surface, it was a small event, but the details were immense. Alex, having organized several large-scale campus events before, had the experience to anticipate problems and assign the right people to the right jobs. It was a complex operation, but he was the conductor, ensuring everything ran smoothly. He felt a little thrill of excitement and called home. "Hey, Mom, is Dad around?" Alex asked, an unusual opener for him. "Your father's at a state conference tonight. You can probably catch him on the local news," said Director Young, sipping her evening tea. Alex told her about his plan to visit a professor's house the next day with his roommate Leo, and mentioned Judge Cole would be there. Leo might not have understood the significance of that name, but Alex's mother did. A man of that stature, even in retirement, carried immense weight. She was proud that her son was moving in such circles. Still, she offered some motherly advice. Don't go in with an agenda. Be genuine, be respectful, but not overly deferential. Just watch how your friend interacts with them and learn from him. Alex nodded, then told her about buying the fish and how he'd split the cost without marking it up. She approved. It's fine to take small losses in life. Don't get caught up in calculating every little thing. What you lose in one area, you often gain in another. If you hadn't put in the effort to get that fish, your roommate might not have thought to invite you along. This is an opportunity. I know, Mom. And control your temper, she continued, unable to resist another piece of advice. Being quick to anger but soft-hearted is a weakness. It's better to be slow to anger. Hadn't put in the effort to get that fish. Your roommate might not have thought to invite you along. This is an opportunity. I know, Mom. And control your temper, she continued, unable to resist another piece of advice. Being quick to anger but soft-hearted is a weakness. It's better to be slow to anger but firm in your convictions. And if you need to say no to someone, just say it. A simple, direct refusal is better than a long, rambling explanation that just makes it sound like you owe them something. Alex listened to his mother's familiar litany as he walked along the tree-lined path back to his dorm, the campus lampposts passing over him one by one. It was a little chilly that night. Back in the dorm, with the windows and doors shut and Jordan's illicit space heater humming away, the room became a warm, cozy den. Warmth bred laziness. Sean, however, was still in his hyper-motivated phase. They say happiness isn't about what you have, but whether you have more than you used to. As long as your life is on an upward curve, no matter how gradual, you'll feel happy. Jordan, on the other hand, was in a bit of a slump. He had zero desire to make money. Why grind away when he could just go home and live off his family? If he made the rounds, hitting up his brother, dad, mom, grandpa, and grandma, he could easily rake in more than he'd ever earn on his own. He was a homebody with simple needs, and his roommates had conditioned him to be exceptionally low maintenance. His last Instagram post had gone viral, and the business inquiries were flooding in again. But he scrolled through the offers, saw a bunch of products he'd never used, and decided he couldn't be bothered. His dad's last allowance transfer hadn't even been spent yet. So, he did what he did best. Lurked in group chats and reposted memes. Leo was texting Stella, asking what she'd had for dinner. She sent a picture of the family meal. It looked surprisingly simple, aside from the expensive-looking tableware. The food itself was down to earth, mostly spicy stir-fries. Was that chicken gizzards with pickled long beans? Just looking at the picture made his mouth water. Stella, my dad loves spicy food. My mom doesn't. I'm fine with whatever. Leo, same here. I can handle the heat, but I don't need it. Just then, the roommate group chat pinged. It was a meme from Jordan. A picture of a tongue with a dark spot on it. Text. Found this blackish-gray thing on my tongue. Google said it was cancer. Went to an oncologist. He pulled out half a peppercorn with a pair of tweezers. Leo, ha 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 ha. He immediately forwarded the picture to Stella. Curled up on the couch, Stella suppressed a smile. Sitting on the sofa opposite her, Richard Vance felt a familiar pang in his chest. Ever since middle school, it seemed his daughter had walked around the house with the stern expression of a hall monitor. He'd worried she was getting ostracized at school, so he'd signed her up for all sorts of sports, hoping would cheer her up. The result? In high school, she'd beaten up an athlete who had a crush on her, and Richard had been called to the principal's office. His first thought had been, good for her. He trusted she wouldn't have done it without reason. It turned out the boy had been harassing her, and she, having been trained by her overprotective father in boxing, taekwondo, and various self-defense arts, had perhaps been a little heavy-handed. Richard still felt a twinge of guilt. Any father of a beautiful daughter would understand. But now, in her senior year of college, the boy had arrived, and he was coming on strong. Richard glanced at the handcrafted crystal house on the coffee table. Inside sat the Tang Dynasty ceramic figurine Leo had given her. The kid's gifts were ridiculously over the top. Weren't they supposed to be from an ordinary family? He worried Stella was being swayed by these material gestures, but at the same time, he knew she was smarter than that. Still, it was unsettling. He decided to approach the situation like a business rival, not a protective father. He feigned a casual chat with his daughter, steering the conversation toward Leo. This ceramic piece looks awfully new, Richard said, trying to sound nonchalant. You sure it's not a fake? Wouldn't want to display a knockoff. Victoria Vance remained silent. She just spent a small fortune buying one of Leo's paintings, a portrait of Stella, no less. She hadn't dared tell Richard yet. And then, the kid had turned around and donated the entire sum to charity without blinking. Victoria had been impressed. Her initial plan to offer him a check to leave her daughter was now looking woefully inadequate. Stella, oblivious to her father's complex emotions, launched into an explanation. It can't be fake. It was authenticated by Professor Gua from the National Museum. A friend's senior relative gave him a house near the university, and it was filled with antiques. He had Professor Gua appraise everything, and it turned out to be worth over $20 million. The relative donated most of it, but let him keep a few things. He thought this one was cute, so he gave it to me. She stated it as a simple fact. But to Richard and Victoria, it was a bombshell. A check? Victoria thought. I need to add at least another zero. 10 times that? 100 million to leave my daughter? I don't even have that much cash. If the boy's circumstances were that extraordinary, maybe she didn't need to intervene after all. Her main fear had been her daughter falling for someone she'd have to financially support. Richard's mind reeled. This story sounded suspiciously like a rumor he'd heard recently about a priceless golden Buddha and a young medical prodigy. Could it be connected to his daughter's friend? You know, he said, choosing his words carefully, why don't you invite your friend over for a meal sometime? A faint blush appeared on Stella's cheeks. Would that be okay? I can ask him. See when he's free. Richard felt another pang. My daughter has changed. She used to make her own decisions. Now, she has to ask someone else. And what, he's a student. How busy can he be? As Leo was playing a game, still half-chatting with Stella, her next message popped up. Would you want to come over to my house for dinner? Holy shit, Leo yelped, nearly dropping his phone. The outburst startled everyone. What's up? Jordan asked, poking his head out from under his blanket. Leo's heart was hammering. He looked at his phone again, as if to confirm he hadn't imagined it. Stella, she just asked if I want to come to her house for dinner. A collective, echoing holy shit filled the room. Dude, you're meeting the parents? Alex said, his eyes wide. Isn't that a little fast? Leo stared at his phone as another message came through. It's nothing special, just a normal dinner. Don't be nervous. You met Victoria. My dad, good old Rich, is even more laid back than she is. He's just curious. If you don't want to, it's no big deal. I'll just tell him you're busy. As she typed, she glanced at her father, whose intense demeanor could make a hardened criminal confess. According to her mother, he used to be quite the pretty boy. Stella couldn't imagine what life experiences had transformed him from that into someone who looked like he needed a full-body tattoo to complete his look. Could he really say no? After everything, dodging a simple dinner felt cowardly. But he was nervous. He could face down professors and retired judges without breaking a sweat, but the thought of having dinner at Stella's house made him feel like a thief caught in the act. The old Leo might have backed down or procrastinated, but he'd been through too much to run from anything anymore. Just treat it like visiting an elder, he told himself, not a job interview. They probably care more about how I treat their daughter than whether I'm some perfect, flawless specimen. He typed and deleted his reply several times before finally sending. I'm meeting Alex at Professor Hoffman's tomorrow afternoon, but any other time is good. Whatever works for you. I'm just a little nervous, meow. Stella, gif of a hand petting a cat. The next morning, Leo woke early. After checking in with the dorm RA, he passed the spot where Professor Reed usually did her morning exercises. It was empty, but she was due back tomorrow. He'd be there to pick her up. He headed to the student strip to get Moose for their morning run. The big golden retriever was ecstatic to see him, his whole body wiggling with joy. Moose had gotten chubbier. He wasn't getting enough exercise. Leo had to physically drag him past the breakfast burrito truck. After the run, he promised. Sean was waiting for them at the track, camera ready. The campus was a mix of bare winter branches and resilient evergreens. Leo ran lap after lap on the red track, with Moose trotting alongside. At first, the dog was a blur of golden fur, but he soon tired out, plopping down on the track. Come on, boy, Leo coaxed. One more lap, and you get a sausage. Moose whined for a moment, but at the word sausage, he scrambled back to his feet and started running again. Sean captured the whole interaction. It was uncanny, as if Leo could actually converse with the dog, and the dog understood every word. The shot was pure gold. Leo managed to get a full 30 minutes of running out of Moose with the promise of more sausages. When they were done, he made good on his word. Sean filmed them waiting at the food truck, man and dog, a picture of perfect harmony. After feeding Moose, Leo and Sean went for their usual breakfast bowl. The base was a savory, porridge-like concoction, thick with seafood broth and bits of imitation crab, the perfect vehicle for the fresh toppings. You could even get the plain base in a cup with a wide straw, perfect for a stealthy classroom breakfast. Sean filmed first, then ate. Leo got Moose a bowl with no spicy or peppery toppings. After they finished, they picked up 2 more to go for their sleeping sons back at the dorm. Leo dropped Moose off, then caught up with Sean, slinging an arm around his shoulders. They walked back together, 2 friends ambling through a crisp morning, the picture of youth. As they walked, Sean suddenly asked, Hey, have you gotten taller? Huh, maybe. I guess being in love makes you grow, Leo joked. You should try it. Puffed, Sean retorted, though he couldn't help but feel there was something off about that logic. Back in the dorm, Jordan was still sound asleep, a testament to his stress-free existence. Alex, however, was already up and meticulously grooming himself. The effortlessly casual look he sported on campus was, in fact, the result of careful cultivation. Jordan was eventually lured from his cocoon by the smell of food. He'd woken up earlier, scrolled on his phone for a bit, then drifted back to sleep. That second sleep was always the sweetest. Alex had chosen his outfit for the day with particular care. Since Leo was taking him to Professor Hoffman's that afternoon, he wanted to make a good impression. First impressions were critical. You couldn't show up in brand new, creased clothes that looked too formal, too try-hard. But you also couldn't be sloppy. So, he chose an outfit that was clean and comfortable, something that fit the occasion. He opted for a younger look than his usual campus attire, swapping his typical shirt and vest for a hoodie and casual trousers. His clothes were brandless, but made of high-quality materials. He wore a handsome, substantial watch, a gift from a relative. His look was relaxed but put together in simple, non-threatening shades of blue and white. His jacket was a Burberry trench coat, but so understated you wouldn't know unless you saw the signature plaid lining. It was the kind of coat an old-school politician might wear, but paired with his casual inner layers, it looked smart and modern, not stuffy. It was a perfectly calibrated ensemble. Jordan emerged from his blanket, shuffled to the bathroom, swished with some strawberry-flavored Listerine, and then sat down to eat, planning to brush his teeth afterward. He was a paradox of hygiene. After breakfast, Alex headed out. Sean started editing his new footage. Jordan, feeling a rare pang of guilt about being unproductive, decided to play one round of his game and then work on his own Instagram content. Leo changed out of his running clothes and headed to the classroom to study, taking the fountain pen Paige had given him. It was a beautiful pen, smooth and elegant, and it made him actually want to practice his penmanship while taking notes. Alex had taken charge of acquiring the fish, so Leo focused on reviewing the answers his godfather had sent him. Dr. Shun had painstakingly written out detailed responses to all of Leo's questions, then photographed the pages and sent them over. The official who'd had the heart attack was now stable, and Dr. Shun had been invited to join the official medical team to consult on a recovery plan that integrated both Western and traditional methods. The health scare had shaken the small group of powerful old men. Secretary Wu was one of the younger ones in their circle, and he'd nearly died. Old Mr. Preston had sent Leo's instructional video to the group chat, urging everyone to try the routine. Even the notoriously stubborn General Ingram had chimed in to say it was effective, which was the highest endorsement possible. About half the men in the group were now starting their days by listening to Leo's voice and watching his demonstration. Meanwhile, in the quiet classroom, Leo was in a state of intense focus, all his buffs, time dilation, calligraphy, memory, concentration, running at full capacity. He filled several pages with neat, dense notes. When his brain and body felt like they were about to overheat, he took a break. Today, he was the lucky recipient of snacks from two of his fellow studiers. Wendy Lou had brought him a hard-boiled egg and half an avocado, neatly sliced in a small container. Colin Edwards provided a cup of unsweetened yogurt. "Thanks for the specialty foods you brought back," Wendy said shyly. "I looked it up, and eggs and avocado are very healthy." Having developed a routine of sharing food, Leo accepted graciously. He ate his snacks, took a 15-minute walk in the sun, and returned to the classroom for a second round of intense, blissful study. Leo stayed in the classroom to study, since he had to leave for Professor Hoffman's in the afternoon. He sometimes wondered if he'd been this motivated in high school. Would he be at an Ivy League university right now? But it was never too late. People learned to drive in their 60s, took up photography in their 70s, and started painting in their 80s. There was always time. At that same moment, Paige Kennedy was just waking up. With no morning classes, she could easily sleep for 12 hours a day. Her live stream the previous afternoon had been a success. A surprising number of her 2,000 or 3,000 viewers had bought the necklace she was wearing. Several people had also asked about her bracelet, but since it was a gift from a relative, she couldn't point them to a store. Paige hadn't become obsessed with streaming. It was just something fun to do. Her family was surprised. They never expected her to earn money. They were just happy if she stayed out of trouble. But now, she was running a small business, and it seemed to be working. Her family members would secretly tune in to her streams, mostly to make sure she wasn't being taken advantage of. They saw her eating, chatting, and answering questions, not begging for donations or doing anything inappropriate. It was just a new form of sales, and there was no shame in working for a living. Their only rule was that she couldn't skip class. Her sudden burst of ambition was a source of great curiosity for her family, especially her older sister, Crystal. There has to be a boy involved, Crystal thought. The name that kept popping up in Paige's conversations was Leo. "Leo brought me this. Leo's taking Moose for a walk. I'm going to bring this to Leo." As if summoned by the thought, Crystal, sitting in the back of her car on the way to work, idly opened TikTok. The first video on her feed was of a boy walking a dog. It was Moose. Crystal recognized him immediately. She'd walked him plenty of times. The video was utterly charming. The boy and the dog seemed to be having a real conversation. The boy's smile was so bright it felt like it could light up a winter day. The shot of them waiting for sausage from a food truck was perfectly framed. The entire video made her smile. She clicked on the account and binge-watched the videos until her car arrived at the office. The boy was certainly handsome, but Crystal worried he might be a little too impressive. Her little sister had good taste, but this was a tough one. If Paige wanted a thing, Crystal could save up and buy it for her. But a boy? That was out her hands. A woman can always tell if a guy in a video has a girlfriend. In the earlier videos, he was dressed simply, but his style had become progressively more polished. There was definitely a girl behind that glow-up. In one of the morning run videos, a tall, athletic girl could be seen running alongside him. Clearly not her sister's type. If you asked Paige to run 2 laps around the lake, she'd probably burst into tears. Crystal stepped out of the car, put away her phone, and her expression became all business. "Good morning, Ms. Kennedy." Her employees greeted her. On her wrist, contrasting with her severe business attire, was a brightly colored, cheerful-looking bracelet. Paige had insisted she wear it. Crystal had said she'd see if it matched her outfits, but she'd put it on immediately. It was lovely, the beads smooth and warm to the touch. She'd already video chatted her aunt to thank her. Her aunt and uncle, it turned out, were also big fans of the boy. Her uncle had even taken him on as his final student. Crystal rubbed her face. Well, that settles it, she thought. My sister has no chance. She sighed. The world is full of star-crossed lovers destined to become cousins. After his morning study session, the system rewarded Leo with a practical new skill. Host has demonstrated diligent study of medicinal knowledge and the ability to apply it thoughtfully to daily life. Reward: basic culinary tonic skill, category, soups, foundation, non-toxic delicious. The non-toxic part intrigued him. What if he deliberately dumped a pound of poison into his soup? Would the skill neutralize it? He briefly imagined a new career as a royal food taster. The unpoisonable husband. His study of operations research also yielded a reward, albeit a temporary one. Buff, enhanced efficiency one day, suitable for multitasking. Leo quickly packed his bag, grabbed lunch, and, on his way, sent his completed homework to his godfather. He then messaged his godmother, Grace, in their group chat to let her know he'd given the pen to Paige. Grace replied, telling him she'd sent him some frost pears. They have to be kept in the freezer, she wrote. I sent a lot, so you can share them with your classmates and teachers. They're from your cousin's classmate's family orchard, she explained in the chat. The pears are wonderful, but they're a pain to ship and store, so get them as soon as they arrive. While juggling a conversation with his godmother and a flirty text exchange with Stella, who had been whisked away for the day by her doting father, he remembered to check in with his own parents. Their immediate response was to ask if he'd run out of money. He also sent a round of quick greetings to his new friends from D.C. Adam Wright, Mr. Preston's assistant, replied enthusiastically with a weather report for Bridgeport, warning him of an impending cold front. Connor Brighton replied a little later, saying he might come down for a visit sometime soon. Leo also sent Liam Ingram the new video of Moose that Sean had just finished editing. In the midst of all this, Leo ran to the cafeteria to beat the lunch rush. He bumped into Jessica Monroe, who was eating alone. She was back in her own clothes, a little worn and pilled, but she seemed more confident. She spotted Leo and gave him a cheerful wave. My treat, Leo said immediately, remembering how she'd insisted on paying for his food when she was nearly broke. Jessica smiled and nodded. Dressed in her old clothes, she seemed more at ease. She got rice, steamed egg custard, and some greens. Leo added a small soup tureen to her tray. He grabbed a large meal for himself and packed 2 more to go for Jordan and Sean. As the cafeteria filled up, Jessica ate slowly, becoming one anonymous face in a sea of students. Ms. Zhu, her mother, had left abruptly. Jessica had overheard her on the phone. Her other daughter, Angela, had caught a cold. Her mother had rushed to the airport, possibly forgetting to leave Jessica any money in her haste. Jessica had taken the airport shuttle back to the city, then a local bus back to campus. With each bump and sway of the bus, the memory of her mother seemed to fade a little more. Back in her familiar, if less warm, clothes, she felt a sense of relief. Her mother's departure wasn't heartbreaking. Perhaps because she'd never had any expectations, the disappointment was mild. She now understood that her mother was capable of love. She just reserved it for her other daughter. But as the sting faded, a new feeling took its place. She realized that with money came a different kind of confidence. You could wear old clothes and still hold your head high, even in front of a boy you liked. It was the same effortless self-assurance she had always envied in Stella Vance. Maybe this, in its own strange way, was life's gift to her. Finishing the last sip of her soup, Jessica stood up and headed back to her dorm. She had decided to follow one piece of her mother's advice, to stop wasting time on scattered part-time jobs and focus her energy on something more meaningful. Her days were still full, but now with a different kind of purpose. She stood on the bridge leading to the women's dorms, the wind whipping around her, the sun bright on her face. She was a part of the scenery, and she was home. Leo packed the food back to the dorm, feeding his waiting sons. Being the guy who brings back food for your roommates in college makes you a true patriarch, especially with a midday rush. While they ate, Leo told Jordan he'd seen Jessica Monroe. She seemed different somehow. Stronger, maybe? Jordan swallowed a mouthful of pot roast. There's a group chat I'm in. Someone doxed her mom. Apparently, she's the second wife of some Singaporean shipping tycoon. Super rich. There are pictures online. Who knows if Jessica will end up moving there with her? Leo thought about the look on Jessica's face in the cafeteria. He doubted it. Before, she was like a hedgehog with all its quills smoothed down, trying not to poke anyone. Now, she was a hedgehog with its quills out, still sharp, but no longer hiding. After lunch, Sean cleaned up while Jordan washed some fruit. Leo was crunching on a crisp pear when his phone rang. It was a premium delivery service. "I'll get it," Sean said, hearing the delivery guy say there were a lot of boxes. "I could use the walk." A lot of boxes was an understatement. Leo's godmother had sent 6 large foam containers, each packed with about 10 pounds of frost pears. They were a special heirloom variety meant to be eaten frozen. Shipping them was like trying to mail ice cream without dry ice. They were still frozen solid, packed with ice packs. The shipping must have cost a fortune. Leo had the driver send one box directly to Stella's house. He and Sean hauled one back to the dorm. Then he took one to Ms. Miller and dropped another off with Mr. Roberts at the security booth. Mr. Roberts chuckled. "Well, now, this is a treat. Don't see many of these around here." He accepted the gift graciously. He'd heard the news about the student who donated $1 million. He knew this kid wasn't trying to bribe him for anything. Just a polite young man. When Leo got to Ms. Miller's, she was dressed in a comfortable-looking White House dress. He brought the box in, ready to leave, but she handed him a glass of water. "Do you have any more of these?" she asked. "My aunt went to college up north. She'd love them. She won't accept most gifts, but this she might." Leo felt like he was being given a cheat code on how to bribe the university president. "I have more," he said quickly. "When would be a good time to drop them off?" "Now is fine. She doesn't take a nap." Leo got his orders. As he was leaving, he added, "Cody shouldn't eat too many of these, especially late at night." I know. You're very thoughtful. Now go," she said, handing him a yogurt for the road. He hustled back, grabbed another box, and headed for the president's house. He couldn't believe he was making house calls to the university president with a box of frozen fruit. President Julia Grant was surprised to see him. She initially thought her niece was ordering students around again, but when Leo explained they were a gift from his family, her expression softened. It was true. She had developed a taste for them during her college years in New England. She accepted the box with a stern, "Don't make a habit of this," but her eyes betrayed her gratitude. Mission accomplished, Leo thought. The whole delivery circuit had eaten up his lunch break. He had one box left for himself, which he knew would get devoured in the dorm, and one he'd set aside for Professor Hoffman. Just then, Alex returned, carrying a freshly acquired, still wriggling sea bass. They packed up the fish and the box of frost pears. Professor Hoffman's driver, Walt, was already waiting for them at the campus gate. He was even more deferential than usual, hopping out to open the car doors and waiting with a polite smile. Walt kept up with the news. He knew this wasn't just any student. This was the kid who had casually donated $1 million. A guy who can give away that much money is someone you treat with respect. Maybe, just maybe, some of that good fortune might rub off. Once in the car, Leo immediately fell asleep. Alex, on the other hand, was quietly nervous. He was about to meet a retired federal judge and one of the most respected professors on campus. He'd spent the last hour mentally reviewing everything he knew about them. He'd always approached things with a mix of strategic nonchalance and tactical precision. In his mind, this was just visiting a teacher with a friend. In practice, he had prepared a full dossier. He glanced over at Leo, who was sleeping soundly, completely unbothered. Alex shook his head with a small smile. The guy's composure was something else. Today, like many days before it, was another lesson in the masterclass of being Leo Foster.